Well, hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to our resuming January 6th show trial coverage. Now, as you guys know, last week I was out at PorkFest, and I believe I missed not one, but two different January 6th show trials. I'm sure that the evidence presented in the show trials that I missed was just overwhelmingly in support of Donald Trump staging an elaborate 7-part plan to overthrow the elections and become lord, ruler, and dictator of the country. I'm sure that's exactly what happened while I was out. You guys can let me know because I'm sure some of you have watched more than I do. But I wanted to go live today because apparently today is going to be a deeply dramatic day in the land of January 6th show trial, and there is going to be a special surprise witness. And I've seen all sorts of speculation about that. I don't know. I haven't been paying attention to the news this morning because I don't know if you guys know, side note, I triggered the Church of Satan Twitter account I triggered the Church of Satan Twitter account yesterday, which is a bizarre experience. Like, of all the people that I really didn't think would be triggered by my Twitter, it was definitely like the Church of Satan Twitter account. But anyway, my point is that I've been a little bit distracted, and if there has been news about who this surprise witness is that is coming to talk to us today in the January 6th emergency dramatic show trial, I don't know what it is. I haven't been paying attention. So if any of you know what's going on, you can let me know. But I do have the stream pulled up here. We are going to be watching a stream from PBS because I want to know what I'm funding with my taxpayer money. And I don't think they've started yet. So we're going to be watching this today. We're going to watch it together. Nope, they still appear to be chatting about God knows what. So we're just going to turn the sound down on that right now. But this is what we're going to be watching, guys. And as you know from previous January 6th show trial sham reaction streams, it might be boring, but there might also be moments of greatness. There may also be moments of hilarity. There may also be moments that we will just look at the screen and say, what kind of ridiculous nonsense world are we living in today? That's what I'm betting. We're going to find out what's going on. But guys, it is scheduled to get started in about 8 minutes. While we are waiting for this to get started, I need you to do a couple things. Number one, I need you to mount that like button for me. Mounting the like button lets YouTube know that this is a stream that maybe you should watch. Maybe you don't even know yet if you should watch it. Hell, I don't even know if you should watch it yet. But let's hope for the best. Let's hope that this stream is going to be the hilarious bit of entertainment that we all need on a Tuesday afternoon in June. And just go ahead and mount that like button for me. The next thing I need you to do is subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already. I do a wide variety range of content on this channel. Most of the content I do revolves around mocking the news, mocking the woke, mocking pretty much anything in our reality that I can mock, because if we don't laugh, we'll cry. So let's laugh as much as possible. If we're going to be sliding down the slow descent into socialism, we may as well amuse ourselves on the way there. So you're going to get a lot of mockery from me on this channel. You will sometimes get serious conversations. I actually had a really great conversation yesterday with Joseph Ford Cotto, and we were talking about the untold history of the founding of the United States, and he basically presented evidence. I'm going to make a clip for it later today if you don't want to watch the full stream, but it is right at the beginning. It's like the first thing we talk about, so it's not like you have to look that far. But he basically repudiated the 1619 project, the entire basis of it, in about 15 minutes. Basically, like, showed that there is no possible way that the 1619 project could be correct, because they overlooked when slaves were actually brought to America. You know, that's Pulitzer Prize winning journalism right there. So you can catch that stream from yesterday. That was pretty great. And then later today, of course, at 9:30 on Tuesdays, I do Nothing Remotely Controversial with Joshua. And so we will be back today. I'm really looking forward. Joshua always has great things to psychic. I'm going to actually set the stream up while we're watching January 6th nonsense. So if you guys have super chats that you would like to ask Joshua, you can get those in probably within the next, 20 minutes or so. And we can get that party started. And I've got some other interesting things I'm going to be doing with the channel next week. Breaking news. next week I will have a member of the Church of Satan on my channel. This is partially how I accidentally triggered the Church of Satan Twitter account yesterday. I actually know a guy that is like a high level like priest in the Church of Satan, and I got him to agree to come on my channel next week. I'm really excited about it. I think that the timing with the Supreme Court decision is interesting, but also we'd actually been talking about him coming on my channel for a while because I genuinely want to hear from like an actual priest in the Church of Satan what it means to be in the Church of Satan. What do they actually do? What are Satanists really? What is their goal? What do they want? And so we will be having that discussion next week on the channel. So make sure you can subscribe and attend that. I'm probably looking forward to this more than any other stream I've done lately. So I think it's going to be I think I'm going to be I think it's going to be great. All right. Guys, if you want to support the work I'm doing in other ways, one of the very best ways you can do that is by becoming a member of my locals community. Locals community members get all sorts of exclusive perks, up to and including you get 2 weekly Zoom calls with me, including one tomorrow at noon. We do them on Mondays at 7 p.m. We do them on Wednesdays at noon. We also have an actively unwoke book club coming up this weekend. That's not exclusive to locals, but you can definitely join that as well. But we do all sorts of cool things in my locals. We have a supporter-only Discord. We have there's a writers group. If you're a writer or creative, you can join that. So we've got all sorts of great things going on that you can take a part of. And how you get access to that is by heading over to kb.locals.com/support, and you can join for $5 a month or more if you want to, but $5 is the minimum buy-in. You can also join for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift, and when you make a one-time gift, you actually unlock all the perks of locals for that gift, which is like a nice benefit to making it through the platform. You can also donate through PayPal and Subscribestar. I am going to be launching a Patreon coming up for people who have been some people asked for that, so why not? I will be launching a Patreon. I'm going to be launching a whole bunch of cool stuff coming up that really doesn't have as much to do with politics as it does to do with just like trying to build a more sane culture and really focusing in on that, because of course politics is downstream from culture. So if you want to support the work I'm doing, the very best way to do it is by joining locals and getting lots of exclusive perks in the meantime, and I definitely appreciate that. And of course, you make sure you purchase a copy of my book. It's just out about a month and a half ago. It's called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. It is available in hardcover. It is available on Kindle. And it is, as of a couple weeks ago, a newly released audiobook read by me. So all of those things are available now. I would definitely appreciate if you picked up your copy of it. And if you have already picked up a copy, please make sure you leave a review, whether that be on Amazon or on Audible or like on a site like Goodreads. I haven't looked at Goodreads, but I've heard people have told tell that on Goodreads, I'm getting a lot of 1 stars because people aren't reading the book. They're just like voting it 1 star based on the fact that they don't like that I'm telling people how to fight back against woke leftists, which, you know, we can imagine why that might be. On Amazon, they're actually only allowing verified reviews. So you have to have purchased your book on Amazon in order to be able to review it on Amazon, partially because of that nonsense. So everyone can help me out by going and counterbalancing all of the crazy reviews that I'm going to get on Goodreads with a nice positive review. 5-star only. If you only have anything less than 5 stars, you can keep it to yourself. But I greatly appreciate all those 5-star reviews. Dragon Water says, point of personal privilege. Mount the like button. Carlin is an amazing, I think that's meant to be goddess with a great locals, even when we fight. Yes, last night we had a little tiff in my locals about abortion, but we all left as friends. Sometimes we do. It's just the way it is. And Dragon Water also wants to know, can we get an edit button on Super Chats? I know, Dragon Water, definitely. All right, guys, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get our January 6th coverage up. I'm going to get the sound going. I thought last night's locals chat was fun. I mean, some people like the fighting, some people don't. We honestly very, very rarely have heated disagreements on my locals calls, but abortion is a heated issue, and it's just the way it goes sometimes. And people are welcome to come or go and do whatever they want to do. Let's see, Chrome tab, share audio, guys. Let me just check and make sure the audio is working. Let me check, make sure you can hear that. Let me know if that is coming through and how the levels are.
Carrying, what is the other evidence they're going to be bringing forward?
Yes, what is the other evidence they're going to be bringing forward?
And what parts of that plan that they have tried to outline are they going to be covering in future hearings?
So it looks like the sound is working. We got a couple more minutes until they get started. How are you guys doing? What should we talk about? How should we spend our time? I do want to welcome everyone that's watching on Odyssey and on Rockfin and on Rumble. Just so you guys know, I am almost, though not always, but almost always when I'm streaming on YouTube. I am also streaming simultaneously on Odyssey and Rockfin and Rumble. Please make sure you're subscribed on All Tech if you are not already, just because if YouTube pulls the stream for some reason, we always do have backups. And so, you know, those are always available. And I do have people that watch exclusively on those platforms as well. But of course, YouTube has the best chat because it's the one that can integrate with StreamYard, which is what I use to stream. All right, looks like we might be getting started. It's all going to be very dramatic, I'm sure. Does anyone have anything they're looking forward to in today's hearing? Does anyone have any predictions for today's hearing? Maybe we could start off with some early psychic predictions for what is going to go on. Yay! Brooks says, I reclaimed my locals account that was with my sunsetted account, and I can now access locals again with the same account as before. Brooks, that's great news. We'll be looking forward to seeing you back on locals. Brooks once gave us Brooks has given us many lessons in our locals chats. I won't spill the beans. You got to become a member and come to our locals chats if you want to know what Brooks is talking about. But he's given us many sage life lessons. Yes, I'm sure we're looking forward to learning more about Trump's elaborate 7-point plan to become Lord Dictator of America and to overturn the election. I'm definitely looking forward to learning more about that. The last one I watched was with that guy that was like speaking in slow motion. That guy was a trip. Yep. Phil thinks they're going to say Trump's name 3 times and he magically is going to appear, just like in Beetlejuice. I think that's a good possibility, Phil. Think so? All right, looks like PBS is doing some little intro here. No, you are not honest and balanced and trusted, PBS. We've got your number. You're not any better than any of the rest. With Yamiche Alcindor, if that is her real name. I am looking for the controller to the mini AC that I have sitting on my floor right next to me, and I cannot find it. Ah! Found it. There we go. Oh, gosh. How many more of these trials do we have? This is going to go on forever, isn't it? This is going to go on up until November is my prediction. They're just going to keep, they might have said they were going to do like seven hearings or whatever it was. They're just going to keep doing new stuff. They're just going to keep finding new. Okay, let's turn up the sound. Let's see what's going on.
Significant because she was a special assistant to former President Trump for legislative affairs.
Oh, is this the surprise
she was
witness?
Executive assistant to his chief of staff, Mark Meadows. She's already provided testimony in closed door sessions.
Oh, so she got a book deal. That's what's going on.
Video excerpts of that
she got a
previous
book deal.
hearings. You can see she has just taken her seat at the witness table. The reporting has it that she is 25 years old. She worked for a couple of years in the Trump White House after graduating from college and after working
worked in the Trump White House as an assistant is their star witness.
Ted Cruz
of
Texas.
She got a book deal.
And Congressman Steve Scalise of Louisiana. We're waiting for the committee. This is Chairman Benny Thompson.
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol will be in order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare the committee in recess at any point.
There we go.
Pursuant
That's about
to
as
House
big as that's going to get.
Deposition Authority Regulation 10, the chair announces the committee's approval to release the deposition material presented during this hearing.
Well, if they had already interviewed her in closed door sessions, why is she this big dramatic surprise witness then? That makes no effing sense. If they'd already interviewed her and they'd already released it in previous hearings,
driven by the former president, aimed at overturning the results of the 2020 presidential
she's going to marry a wealthy Democratic donor and never have to work another day in her life. Is what's going to happen after this.
This effort was based on a lie that the election was stolen, tainted by widespread fraud, Donald Trump's
You don't have to
big
keep
lie.
trying to convince us
In the
of
weeks
things that
ahead,
are
the
obvious
committee will hold additional hearings
lies.
about how Donald Trump summoned a mob of his supporters to Washington, spurred them to march on the Capitol, and failed to take meaningful action to quell the violence as it was unfolding on January 6th. However, in recent days, the Select Committee has obtained new information dealing with what was going on in the White House on January 6th and in the days prior.
You already said you interviewed her in a
Specific,
previous
detailed
hearing.
information about what the former
This wasn't in the last
president
couple
and his top
days.
aides were doing and saying in those critical hours. Firsthand details of what transpired in the office of the White House Chief of Staff, just steps from the
She
Oval
is saying she's
Office
husband hunting
as
is
the
what's going
threats of
on.
violence became clear.
25
and
years old,
indeed, violence ultimately descended on
probably
the
doesn't
Capitol
have any
in the
real skill
attack
set,
on American democracy.
knows she can get a sweet book deal by doing this crap.
It's important that the American
husband
people hear
hunting.
that information immediately. That's why, in consultation with the Vice Chair, I've recalled the committee for today's hearing. As you've seen and heard in our earlier hearings, the Select Committee has developed a massive body of evidence thanks to the many
No,
hundreds
you
of
have developed a
witnesses
body
who
of
have
selected
voluntarily
evidence that was
provided
taken out of
information relevant
context
to our investigation.
and have eliminated
It
all
hasn't
evidence that
always
does
been
not
easy to
confirm the
get that
conclusions that you want to
information
find. That is the
because
evidence
the
that you have
same
discovered.
people who drove the former president's pressure campaign to overturn the election are now trying to cover up the truth about January 6th. But thanks to the courage of certain individuals, the truth won't be buried. The American people won't be left in the dark. Our witness today, Ms. Cassidy Hutchinson, has embodied that courage. I won't get into
And
a
she
lot of
will get
detail
a fat
about Ms.
contributor
Hutchinson's
deal on
testimony. Will
MSNBC when
show.
we're done.
I'll allow her words to speak for themselves, and I hope everyone at home will listen very closely. First, I'll recognize our distinguished Vice Chair, Ms. Cheney of Wyoming, for any opening statements she'd care to offer.
Mr. Chairman, in our first five, a significant number of Republicans, including former Trump administration Justice Department officials, Trump campaign officials, several members of President
Did you
Trump's
guys
White
know
House
that Liz
staff,
Cheney is begging
prominent
for
conservative
Democrats
judge,
to
and
vote
several
for her
others.
in the Republican
Today's
primary in
witness,
Wyoming?
Ms.
Has
Cassidy
anyone ever heard
Hutchinson,
this?
is another Republican and another former member of President Trump's White House staff. Certain of us in the House of Representatives recall that Ms. Hutchinson once worked for House Republican Whip Steve Scalise, but she is also a familiar face on Capitol Hill because she held a prominent role in the White House Legislative Affairs Office and later was the principal aide to President Trump's Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. Ms. Hutchinson has spent considerable time up here on Capitol Hill representing the Trump administration, and we welcome her back. Up until now, our hearings have each been organized to address specific elements of
She's
President Trump's
25.
plan to overturn the 2020
She does not
election.
look 25.
Today, we are departing
in any
somewhat
way.
from that model because Ms. Hutchinson's testimony touches on several important and cross-cutting topics that are relevant to each of our future hearings. In her role working for the White House Chief of Staff,
She's not
Ms.
25.
Hutchinson handled a vast number of sensitive issues. She worked in the West Wing, several steps down the hall from the Oval Office. Ms. Hutchinson spoke daily with members of Congress, with high-ranking officials in the administration, with senior White House staff.
She
including
looks like
Mr.
she's being
Meadows,
held hostage.
with
You are
White House
absolutely right.
counsel,
She looks like
lawyers,
she's being
and with
held
Mr. Tony
hostage.
Ornato, who served
Blink
as the
twice
White
if you're
House
being held
Deputy Chief of
hostage.
Staff.
Blink twice if we can
She
help
also
you.
worked on a daily basis with members of the Secret
She's not
Service
25.
who were posted
I
in the
dispute
White House.
this.
In short, Ms. Hutchinson was in a position to know a great deal about the happenings in the Trump White House. Ms. Hutchinson has already sat for 4 videotaped interviews
Yes,
with
I'm sure
committee
a
investigators,
25-year-old
and we
that was
thank
an
her very much
assistant in
for
the
her
Legislative
cooperation
Affairs
and for
Office
her
was
courage.
deeply
We will
intertwined
cover
with the
certain,
inner
but
workings
not all relevant topics
of
within
everything that
Ms.
was happening in the
Hutchinson's
White
knowledge
House.
today.
Sure.
Again, our future hearings will supply greater detail, putting the testimony today in a broader and more complete context. Today, you will hear Ms. Hutchinson relate certain firsthand observations of President Trump's conduct.
She
on
looks like
January
she's
6th.
37 at a minimum. I'm
You will
sorry.
also hear new
I know that's
information
petty, but it's true.
regarding the actions and statements of Mr. Trump's senior advisors that day, including his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and his White House counsel. And we will begin to examine evidence bearing on what President Trump and members of the White House staff knew about the prospect for violence on January 6th, even before that violence began. To best communicate the information the committee has gathered, we will follow the practice of our recent hearings, playing videotape testimony from Ms. Hutchinson and others, and also posing questions to Ms. Hutchinson live. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Our witness today is Ms. Cassidy Hutchinson, who served in the Trump administration in the White
Grasping
House
for air.
Office
Correct,
of
incognito.
Legislative Affairs from 2019 to 2020, and as a special assistant to the President in the White House Chief of Staff's office from March 2020 through January 2021. I will now swear in our witness. The witness will please stand and raise her right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help
Thank you,
God.
Richard, for the super chat. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You may be seated. Let the record reflect the witness answered in the affirmative. I now recognize myself for questions. Ms. Hutchinson, I'd like to start with a few questions about your background.
Richard, if you think I blocked you incorrectly, just shoot me an email. Go to drcarlin.com/contact or use the email address on this channel. Let me know your handle and I'll take a look.
Congress, including Steve Scalise.
And I'll probably unblock you, to be honest, unless you said something really dickish.
Kevin McCarthy,
but I don't know what your Twitter handle is, so I can't help you right now.
Others show you with
but send me an email.
And members of Congress aboard Air Force One. Before you worked in the White House, you worked on Capitol Hill for Representative Steve Scalise, the Republican whip, and Senator Ted Cruz. And then in 2019, you moved to the White House and served there until the end of the Trump administration in 2020. When you started at the White House, you served in the Office of
Mike, the
Legislative
dad Crosby,
Affairs.
I feel like I'm being held hostage by this slow-moving train wreck. Isn't that the truth, Mike? Ain't it the truth? Thank you for the super chat.
Of greater responsibility.
All right, I'll check right now. I'll check right now, and I'll unblock you, Richard. Don't worry about it.
When I moved over to the White House Chief of Staff's office with Mr. Meadows when he became the 4th Chief of Staff, it's difficult to describe a typical day. I was a special assistant to the president and an advisor to the Chief of Staff. The days depended on what the president was doing.
Richard, you are unblocked. Thank you for asking nicely and being
reflected.
polite.
I had a lot of outreach with members of Congress.
I'll even follow you.
Cabinet officials. I would work on policy issues with relevant internal components and members on the Hill, as well as security protocol at the White House complex for Mr. Meadows and the president.
She is not 25.
And then you received another promotion in March 2020. At that time, you became the principal aide to the new White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. Is that right?
That's correct, sir.
What did a typical day look like for you in your work with Mr. Meadows?
It varied with what was going on. We spent a lot of time on the Hill. I spent time on the Hill independently too, as I was.
Thank you, Richard. And again, thank you for asking politely to be unblocked. I appreciate that.
We did a lot of presidential travel engagements, but mostly I was there to serve what the Chief of Staff needed. And a lot of times what the Chief of Staff needed was a reflection of what
there
the
is no way in this universe this woman's 25.
So
what else are they lying about?
That you spoke regularly in your position, both with members of Congress and with senior members of the Trump administration?
That's correct. That's a fair assessment, sir.
And would you say that in your work with Mr. Meadows, you are typically in contact with him and others in the White House throughout the day?
That's correct, sir. Mr. Meadows and I were in contact almost pretty much throughout every day, consistently.
Although so much of grave importance happens in the West Wing of the White House, it's quite a small building. Above me on the screen, you can see a map of the first floor of the West Wing of the White House. On the right, you can see the President's Oval Office. On the left, the Chief of Staff's office suite. Within the Chief of Staff's office suite is the heart of the West Wing, was your desk, which was between the Vice President's office, Ms. Kirshner's office, and the Oval Office. Ms. Hutchinson, is this an accurate depiction of where you were located?
It's accurate. It's a lot smaller than it looks.
Absolutely. Ms. Hutchinson, this is a photo that shows the short distance between your office and the President's Oval Office. And it only takes 5 to 10 seconds or so to walk down the hall from your office to the Oval Office. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. Pursuant to the Section 5C8 of House Resolution 503, the chair recognizes gentlewoman from Wyoming, Ms. Cheney, for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we will begin today with an exchange that first provided Ms. Hutchinson a tangible sense of the ongoing planning for the events of January 6th. On January 2nd, 4 days before the attack on our Capitol, President Trump's lead lawyer, Mr. Giuliani, was meeting with White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and others. Ms. Hutchinson, do you remember Mr. Giuliani meeting with Mr. Meadows on January 2nd, 2021?
I do. He met with Mr. Meadows in the evening of January 2nd, 2021.
And we understand that you walked Mr. Giuliani out of the White House that night, and he talked to you about January 6th. What do you remember him saying?
As Mr. Giuliani and I were walking to his vehicles that evening, he looked at me and said something to the effect of, "Cass, are you excited for the 6th? It's going to be a great day." I remember looking at him and saying, "Rudy, could you explain what's happening on the 6th?" He had responded something to the effect of, "We're going to the Capitol. It's going to be great. The president's going to be there. He's going to look powerful. He's going to be with the members. He's going to be with the senators. Talk to the chief about it. Talk to the chief about it. He knows about it."
And did you go back?
I don't believe
then
that.
up to the West Wing and tell Mr. Meadows about
I don't believe it for
conversation with Mr.
one red
Giuliani?
second.
I did. After Mr. Giuliani had left the campus that evening, I went back up to our office and I found Mr. Meadows in his office on the couch. He was scrolling through his phone. I remember leaning against the doorway and saying, "I had an interesting conversation with Rudy, Mark. Sounds like we're going to go to the Capitol." He didn't look up from his phone and said something to the effect of, "There's a lot going on, Cass, but I don't know. Things might get real, real bad on January 6th.
Ms. Hutchinson, Mr. Meadows is engaged in litigation with the committee to try to avoid testifying here. What
I
was
don't
your
believe this happened.
reaction when he said to you things might get real,
Bullshit.
real bad?
In the days before January 2nd, I was apprehensive about the 6th. I had heard general plans for a rally. I had heard tentative movements.
You didn't hear
potentially go to the
anything about
Capitol.
January 6th? Bullshit.
When hearing Rudy's
You
take on
work in the
January 6th
West
and then
Wing and you
Mark's
didn't hear anything
response,
about January 6th?
that evening was the first
Are you on
moment
Twitter?
that I remember feeling scared and nervous for what
This
could
is
happen on
theater.
January 6th.
We are watching
And
theater.
I had a deeper concern for what was happening with the planning aspects of it.
Wasn't there a second
Thank
planned
you, Ms.
rally on the
Hutchinson.
far side of the
Today,
Capitol on
we're
the
going to
6th?
be
Yes, there was.
focusing primarily
Planned,
on the events of
permitted
January 5th
rally. Yes,
and
there
6th at
was.
the White House. But to begin and to frame the discussion, I want to talk about a conversation that you had.
You're going to tell me
Mr.
she
John
was working
Ratcliffe,
in the White House and
the
she just didn't
Director of
even know
National
anything.
Intelligence.
She didn't know
And,
anything was going to
you
go
had
on
this
on January
conversation in
6th on
December
January
of
2nd. It was
2020.
but a mystery
Mr.
wrapped in a
Ratcliffe was
riddle. How could she
nominated by
possibly
President Trump
know?
to oversee U.S. intelligence,
fuck?
our U.S. intelligence community. And before his appointment, Mr. Ratcliffe was a Republican member of Congress. As you will see on this clip, Director Ratcliffe's comments in December of 2020 were prescient.
My understanding was Director Ratcliffe didn't want much to do with the post-election period. Director Ratcliffe felt that it wasn't something that the White House should be pursuing. It felt it was dangerous for the president's legacy. He had expressed to me that he was concerned that it could spiral out of control and potentially be dangerous, either for our democracy or the way that things were going for the 6th.
When you say it wasn't something the White House should be pursuing.
Unrelated note about your Last Locals live stream, I watched the Blair White Sydney Watson video, and it was actually Blair and not Sydney who made the claims, and she wasn't talking about Elijah. All right, thanks for that update, Ty. I appreciate that. I do need to watch that at some point, maybe. I don't know. Thank you, Ty.
Filing lawsuits in certain states where there didn't seem to be significant evidence, and reaching out to state legislatures about that. So pretty much the way that the White House was handling the post-election period, he felt that there could be dangerous repercussions.
So she's parroting back what people who were against Trump have said to her.
Democracy.
That's what's going on. She's parroting back what people who were against Trump have told her.
So Ms. Hutchinson, now we're going to turn to certain information that was available before January 4th and what the Trump administration and the president knew about the potential for violence before January 6th. On the screen, you will see an email received by Acting Deputy Attorney General Donahue on January 4th from the National Security Division of the Department of Justice. Mr. Donahue testified in our hearings last week. The email identifies apparent planning by those coming to Washington on January 6th to, quote, occupy federal buildings and discussions of, quote, invading the Capitol building. Here's what Mr. Donahue said to us.
And we knew that if you have tens of thousands of very upset people showing up in Washington, D.C., that there was potential for violence.
The U.S. Secret Service was looking at similar information and watching the planned demonstrations. In fact, their intelligence division sent several emails to White House personnel like Deputy Chief of Staff Tony Ornato and the head of the President's Protective Detail, Robert Engel, including certain materials listing events like those on the screen. The White House continued to receive updates about planned demonstrations, including information regarding the Proud Boys organizing and planning to attend events on January 6th. Although Ms. Hutchinson has no detailed knowledge of any planning involving the Proud Boys for January 6th, she did note this.
I recall hearing the word Oath Keeper and hearing the word Proud Boys closer to the planning of the January 6th rally when Mr. Giuliani would be around.
Oh, come on.
On January 3rd, the Capitol Police issued a special event assessment. In that document, the Capitol Police noted that the Proud Boys and other groups planned to be in Washington, D.C. on January 6th and indicated that, quote, unlike previous post-election protests, the targets of the pro-Trump supporters are not necessarily the counter-protesters as they were previously, but rather Congress itself is the target on the 6th.
The target of the pro-Trump supporters was Congress. There was a planned,
of course, we all
permitted
know now
rally
that the Proud Boys
at
showed
the
up
Capitol.
on January 6th, marched from the Washington
permitted
Monument to the Capitol
rally.
that day, and led the riotous mob to invade and occupy our Capitol. Ms. Hutchinson, I want to play you a clip of one of our meetings when you described a call on January 4th that you received from National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien on the same topic, potential violence on January 6th.
Thank you, Dragonwater.
I received
Appreciate
a
it.
call from Robert O'Brien, the National Security Advisor. He had asked if he could speak with Mr. Meadows about potential words of violence that he was hearing that were potentially going to happen on the Hill on January 6th. I had asked if he had connected with Tony Ornato because Tony Ornato had a conversation with Mark about that topic. Robert had said, I'll talk to Tony, and then I don't know if Robert ever connected with Mark about the issue.
Ms. Hutchinson, can you describe for us Mr. Ornato's responsibilities as Deputy Chief of Staff?
The Deputy Chief of Staff position at the White House for operations is arguably one of the most important positions that somebody can hold. They're in charge of all security protocol for the campus and all presidential protectees, primarily the president and the first family, but anything that requires security for any individual that has presidential protection, so the Chief of Staff or the National Security Advisor, as well as the Vice President's team too. Tony would oversee all of that, and he was the conduit for security protocol between White House staff and the United States Secret Service.
Thank you. And you also described a brief meeting between Mr. Ornato and Mr. Meadows on the potential for violence. The meeting was on January 4th. They were talking about the potential for violence on January 6th. Let's listen to a clip of that testimony.
Remember, Mr. Ornato had talked to him about intelligence reports. I just remember Mr. Ornato coming in and saying that we had intel reports saying that there could potentially be violence on the 6th.
You also told us
She is
about
killing
reports
me.
of
You need paying
violence
for this.
and
Stay
weapons that
strong.
the Secret
Thank you,
Service were
Aleda.
receiving
I
on the night
appreciate
of
the
January
support.
5th and throughout the day on January 6th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
There are reports that police in Washington, D.C. had arrested several people with firearms or ammunition following a separate pro-Trump rally in Freedom Plaza on the evening of January 5th. Are those some of the reports that you recall hearing about?
They are.
There was no violence in that rally.
Of course, the world now knows that the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th had many different types of weapons. When a president speaks, the Secret Service typically requires those attending to pass through metal detectors, known as magnetometers, or MAGs for short. The Select Committee has learned that people who willingly entered the enclosed area for President Trump's speech were screened so they could attend the rally at the Ellipse. They had weapons and other items that were confiscated: pepper spray, knives, brass knuckles, tasers, body armor, gas masks, batons, blunt weapons.
There were piles
And those were
of
just
things
from
that
the
they
people who chose to
confiscated.
go through the
Like they were
security
visible.
for the
Like you
president's
could see
event
them
on
where
the
people were by
Ellipse.
security. There were
Not
piles
the
of these
several
things.
thousand
There were things
members
like
of the crowd who
umbrellas
refused to go
and
through the
bags
MAGs
and
and
chairs.
watched from the lawn near the Washington Monument. The
Well,
Select Committee
the
has
line to
learned
go
about
through security
reports
was
from
like
outside
18
the
miles fucking
magnetometers
long.
and has obtained police radio transmissions identifying individuals
There are a
with
lot of reasons
firearms,
you might not go through the
including
security that had nothing to do with
AR-15s,
carrying a weapon.
near the Ellipse on the morning of January 6th. Let's listen.
There's an individual who's in a tree. He's going to be a white male, about 6 feet tall, thin build, brown cowboy boots. He's got blue jeans and a blue jean jacket, and underneath the blue jean jacket, the complainants both saw a stock of an AR-15. He's going to be with a group of individuals about 5
You're
feet.
saying he was
Other
hiding an AR-15 under a
individuals.
jean jacket?
Two of the individuals in that group at the base of the tree near the porta potties were wearing green fatigues, green olive drab style fatigues. About
Does
5'8",
anyone think it
5'9",
sounds a little
skinny,
unrealistic to be hiding an
white
AR-15
males,
under a
brown
jean
cowboy
jacket?
boots. They had Glock-style pistols in their waistband.
8736 with the message that subject weapon on his right hip. After that, he's in the tree.
Motor 1, make sure PPD knows they have an elevated threat in the tree south side of Constitution Avenue. Look for the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, American flag face mask, cowboy boots, weapon on the right side hip.
I got 3 men walking down the street in fatigue while carrying AR-15. Copy at
Bullshit.
14th and Independence.
Bullshit. I don't believe it. I didn't see. Well, okay, so I'm not gonna question that people may have been like carrying like pistols or things. I'm not gonna question that. That probably is true.
The first report that
I didn't see anyone with AR-15s.
we now know was sent in the 8 o'clock hour on January 6th. This talked about people in the crowd.
And I was walking all over that area.
Carrying radio
I was in the back on the
and
lawn. I didn't go through
military-grade
security.
backpacks.
I saw no one with
The second
AR-15s.
report we showed you on the screen was sent
I
by
was
the Secret
looking
Service
at
in the 11
everything
a.m.
because
hour.
I wanted to see what was
It
going
addressed
on.
reports of a man with a rifle near the Ellipse. Ms. Hutchinson, in prior testimony, you described for us a meeting in the White House around 10 a.m. in the morning of January 6th involving Chief of Staff Meadows and Tony Ornato. Were you in that meeting?
I was.
Let's listen to your testimony about that meeting, and then we'll have some questions.
I want video of these AR-15s.
think
You've got
the last
video of
time we
everything
talked,
else. I
you
want video of the
mentioned that,
AR-15s. I don't believe it.
Some of the weapons that people had at the rally included flagpoles, oversized sticks or flagpoles, bear spray. Is there anything else that you recall hearing about that the people who would gather on the ellipse had?
I recall Tony and I having a conversation with Mark probably around 10 a.m., 10:15 a.m., where I remember.
And how is all
Tony
this just
mentioning
evidence that they just ascertained in the last
knives,
couple days?
guns
They are
in the
so
form of
full of
pistols and
shit.
rifles,
That was the whole point of this meeting. They're
bear
like,
spray,
we
body
just got
armor,
emergency
spears, and
evidence that has just
flagpoles.
come to us in the
Spears
last
were
2
one
days.
item,
This is not
flagpoles
evidence
were
they
one
got in
item,
the
but
last 2
then
days.
Tony
That's a
had relayed
lie.
to me something to the effect of, and these effing people are fastening spears onto the ends of flagpoles.
What?
Ms. Hutchinson, here's a clip of your testimony
I
regarding
want to see a
Mr. Meadows'
spear on the end of a
response to
flagpole.
learning that the rally
She just said that
attendees
people
were
were
armed
fashioning
that day.
spears on the ends of flagpoles. I want to see a spear.
What was
I
Mark's
want evidence.
reaction, Mr.
I
Meadows'
just want a photo.
reaction
Show me a single photo of a
to
spear.
this list of weapons that people had in the crowd?
When Tony and I went in to talk to Mark that morning, Mark was sitting on his couch and on his
I don't
phone,
even
which
need a
is
video
something
of a spear.
typical.
I just want to
I
see
remember
one
Tony just
single
got right
photo
into
of
it.
a
I was like, "Sorry, I just
spear
wanna let you
fashioned
know,"
onto a
and informed
flagpole.
him, like, this is how many people we have outside the mags right now. These are the weapons that we're known to have. It's possible he listed more weapons off that I just don't recall. And gave him a brief but and concise explanation, but also fairly thorough. And I remember distinctly Mark not looking up from his
Guys,
phone.
please mount that like
And
button if I'm
remember
making this a little bit more
Tony
bearable for
finishing
you.
his
It's not about
explanation
liking the content. We don't like the
and it
content, but
taking a few
please help the
seconds
channel.
for
I
Mark to say
appreciate it.
something to the point where I almost said, "Mark, did you hear him?" And then Mark chimed in and was like, "All right, anything else?" Still looking down at his phone. And Tony looked at me and I looked at Tony and Tony said, "No, sir, do you have any questions?" It's like, "What are you hearing?" And I looked at Tony and I was like, "Sir, he just told you about what was happening down at the rallies." And he was like, yeah, I know. And then he looked up and said, "Have you talked to the president?" And Tony said, "Yes, sir, he's aware too." He said, "All right, good."
He asked
Theater
Tony
is
if
the
Tony
point.
had informed the president.
Yes.
And Tony said, yes, he had.
So, Ms. Hutchinson, is it your understanding that Mr. Ornato told the president about weapons at the rally on the morning of January 6th?
That's what Mr. Ornato relayed to me.
And here's how you characterize Mr. Meadows' general response when people raised concerns about what could happen on January 6th.
So at the time, in the days leading up to the 6th, there were lots of public reports about how things might go bad on the 6th, even the potential for violence. If I'm hearing you correctly, what stands out to you is that Mr. Meadows did not share those concerns, or at least did not act on those concerns.
Did not act on those concerns would be accurate.
But other people raised them to him, like in this exchange, you mentioned that Mr. Ornato pulled him aside.
That's correct.
Ms. Hutchinson, we're going to show now an exchange of texts between you and Deputy Chief of Staff Ornato. And these text messages were exchanged while you were at the ellipse. In one text, you write, "But the crowd looks good from this vantage point as long as we get the shot. He was effing furious." And the text messages also stress that President Trump kept mentioning the OTR and off-the-record movement. We're going to come back and ask you about that in a minute. But could you tell us, first of all, who it is in the text who
Hang
was
on.
furious?
He doesn't get it that the people on the
He in
monument
that
side
text that I
don't
was
want to come
referring
in.
to
They,
was the president.
the line to get through
And,
security into
why
the
was he
ellipse
furious, Ms.
was a
Hutchinson?
mile and a half long.
He was
That's not an
furious
exaggeration.
because
It was literally
he
a mile and a
wanted
half
the
long. I waited
arena
in it for
that
over
we
an
had on the
hour before I
ellipse
just
to be
gave up because it
maxed
wasn't
out at
moving.
capacity for all attendees. The advance team had relayed to him that the mags were free flowing. Everybody who wanted to come in had already come in, but he still was angry about the extra space and wanted more people to come in.
So Trump didn't
And
want
did you
empty
go
space. That's a
to
very
the
Trump
rally
thing.
in the presidential motorcade?
I was there, yes, in the motorcade.
And were you backstage with the president and other members of his staff and family?
I was.
And you told us, Ms. Hutchinson, about particular comments that you heard while you were in the tent area.
When we were in the offstage announce area tent behind the stage, he was very concerned about the shot, meaning the photograph that we would get, because the rally space wasn't full. One of the reasons, which I've previously stated, was because he wanted it to be full and for people to not feel excluded because they'd come far to watch him at the rally. And he felt the mags were at fault for not letting everybody in. But another leading reason, and likely the primary reason, is because he wanted it full and he was angry that we weren't letting people through the mags with weapons, what the Secret Service deems as weapons and our weapons. But when we were in the offstage announce tent, I was part of a conversation. I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, you know, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
So
Just
they're
to be
mad
clear, Ms.
that
Hutchinson,
Trump
is it
wanted
your
to put himself in
understanding that the
danger of being
president
shot.
wanted to take the mags away and said that the armed individuals were not there to hurt him?
That's a fair assessment.
The issue
I would
wasn't
think that'd
with
be
the
pretty
amount
much
of
anyone's
space
assessment.
available in the official rally area.
It took
only,
the
but
mile.
instead
The
that
line to
people
get in
did
was a
not want
mile
to
and a
have
half
to go
long.
through the
The
mags.
line to get
Let's
into the
listen to
official
a
rally
portion of
area
what you told us
literally
about
wrapped
that.
around the entire
In
Washington
this
Monument.
particular
That is
instance,
how
it wasn't
long
the
that
capacity
fucking
of
line
our space.
was.
It was the mags and the people that didn't want to come through, and that's what Tony had been trying to relay to him that morning. You know, it's not the issues that we encountered on the campaign. We have enough space, sir.
And I
They
didn't
don't
see
want to
any
come
point,
in
and I
right
was
now.
there
They
up until
have
Trump's
weapons
speech
they
started.
don't want
I didn't see
confiscated by the
any
Secret
point in which
Service,
that line was like a
and they're
manageable
fine on the
thing that
mall.
you
They
could
can
just
see you on the
walk
mall.
right in. It was
They want to march
long
straight
as
to the
shit all
Capitol
day long.
from the mall.
The president apparently wanted all attendees inside the official rally space and repeatedly said, quote, "They're not here to hurt me."
True.
And just to be clear, so he was told again in that conversation, or was he told again in that conversation that people couldn't come through the mags because they had weapons?
Correct.
And that people, and his response was to say they can march to the Capitol from the ellipse.
Something to the effect of, take the effing mags away. They're not here to hurt me. Let them in. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol after the rally's over. They can march from the ellipse. Take the effing mags away. Then they can march to the Capitol.
Ms. Hutchinson, what we saw when those clips were playing were photos provided by the National Archives showing the president in the offstage tent before his speech on the ellipse. You were in some of those photos as well. And I just want to confirm that that is when you heard the president say the people with weapons weren't there to hurt him and that he wanted the Secret Service to remove the magnetometers.
That's correct. In the photos that you displayed, we were standing towards the front of the tent with the TVs, really close to where he would walk out to go onto the stage. These conversations happened 2 to 3 minutes before he took the stage that morning.
Let's reflect on that for a moment. President Trump was aware that a number of the individuals in the crowd had weapons and were wearing body armor. And here's what President Trump instructed the crowd to do.
We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down.
It was a surprise when Trump said he was going to be there with us. That was a surprise, and I was at the hotel. I wasn't there when that speech happened because I was cold and I couldn't hear anything.
It soon became apparent.
But that was a
to the
surprise
Secret
when Trump
Service,
said that,
including the Secret Service teams in the crowd, along with White House staff, that security at the Capitol would not be sufficient.
Well, by this time, it had already started at the Capitol. Keep that in mind. At this time, the nonsense at the Capitol had already started. No one knew about it.
Mr. Meadows' detail with me in between those individuals and then a few other the bodies on the ground, just the Secret Service doing advance. They were getting notifications through their radios, and Mr. Ornato in one phone conversation had called me and said,
make sure the chief knows that they're getting closer to the Capitol. It's they're having trouble stacking bodies.
And Ms. Hutchinson, when you said they were having trouble stacking bodies, did you mean that law enforcement at the Capitol needed more people to defend the Capitol from the rioters?
It was becoming clear to us and to the Secret Service that Capitol Police officers were getting overrun at the security barricades outside of the Capitol
So it was
building,
happening during Trump's
and they were
speech,
having
is what you're saying.
They were short people.
It was
to
happening during Trump's
defend the building
speech.
against the rioters.
And you mentioned that Mr. Ornato was conveying this to you because he wanted you to tell Mr. Meadows. So did you tell Mr. Meadows that people were getting closer to the Capitol and that Capitol Police was having difficulty?
After I had the conversation with Mr. Meadows, after I had the conversation with Mr. Ornato, I went to have the discussion with Mr. Meadows. He was in a secure vehicle at the time making a call. So when I had gone over to the car, I went to open the door to let him know, and he had immediately shut it. I don't know who he was speaking with. It wasn't something that he regularly did, especially when I would go over to give him information. So I was a bit taken aback, but I didn't think much of it, and thinking that I would be able to have the conversation with him a few moments later.
And were you able to have that conversation a few moments later?
Probably about 20 to 25 minutes later. There was another period in between where he shut the door again. And then when he finally got out of the vehicle, we had the conversation. But at that point, there was a backlog of information that he should have been made aware of.
And so you opened the door to the control car and Mr. Meadows pulled it shut?
That's correct.
And he did that 2 times?
That's correct.
And when you finally were able to give Mr. Meadows the information about the violence at the Capitol, what was his reaction?
He almost had a lack of reaction.
Oh my God.
I remember him saying, all right, something to the effect of, how much longer does the president have left in his speech?
That's not a lack of a reaction. That's a literal reaction.
Much of this information
She's trying
about
to
the
paint it as
potential
though
for
Mark
violence,
Meadows
was
understood
known
what was
or
going
learned
on.
before the onset of
And
the
like
violence,
he knew about
early
it.
enough for
That's what
President
she's
Trump
trying
to
to do.
take steps to prevent it. He could, for example, have urged the crowd at the Ellipse not to march to the Capitol. He could have condemned the violence immediately once it began, or he could have taken multiple other steps. But as we will see today and in later hearings, President Trump had something else in mind. One other question at this point, Ms. Hutchinson, were you aware of concerns that White House counsel Pat Cipollone or Eric Hirschman had about the language President Trump used in his Ellipse speech?
There were many discussions the morning of the 6th about the rhetoric of the speech that day. In my conversations with Mr. Hirschman, he had relayed that we would be foolish to include language that had been included at the president's request, which had lines along to the effect of, fight for Trump, we're going to march to the Capitol, I'll be there with you, fight for me.
Why didn't
fight
any
for
of
what
this
we're
come
doing,
up
fight
in
for the
Trump's
movement.
second impeachment hearing?
Things about the vice president at the time too.
Why is she only coming
Both Mr.
forward
Hirschman
now?
and White House counsel's office
Where the
were
fuck was
urging
she
the
during
speechwriters
impeachment
to not include that
two?
language for legal concerns and also for the optics of what it could portray the president wanting to do that day.
And we just heard the president say that he would be with his supporters as they marched to the Capitol. Even though he did not end up going, he certainly wanted to. Some have questioned whether President Trump genuinely planned to come here to the Capitol on January 6th. In his book, Mark Meadows falsely wrote that after President Trump gave his speech on January 6th, he told Mr. Meadows that he was, quote, speaking metaphorically about the walk to the Capitol. As you will see, Donald Trump was not speaking metaphorically.
Well, then why didn't he
As
go to
we
the
heard
Capitol, Liz?
earlier,
If he
Rudy
wasn't
Giuliani
speaking
told Ms.
metaphorically, then why didn't he
Hutchinson
go?
that Mr. Trump planned to travel
He
to the
very
Capitol
obviously,
on
based on
January
his own
6th.
actions, was
I want
actually
to
speaking
pause for
metaphorically.
just a moment to ask you, Ms. Hutchinson, to explain some of the terminology you will hear today. We've heard you use 2 different terms to describe plans for the president's movement to the Capitol or anywhere
She's
else.
going to get a book deal
One
and
of
a
those
rich
is
husband that's going
scheduled
to take care of her
movement,
so
and
she never
another
has to
one
work
is
another day in her life.
OTR.
That's what's going to
Could you
happen.
describe for us what each of those mean?
A
Fat
scheduled
book deal.
presidential movement is on his official schedule. It's notified to the press and to a wide range of staff that will be traveling with him. It's known to the public, known to the Secret Service, and they're able to coordinate the movement days in advance. An off-the-record movement is confined to the knowledge of a very, very small group of advisors and staff. Typically, a very small group of staff would travel with him, mostly that are just included in the national security package. You can pull an off-the-record movement together in less than an hour. It's a way to kind of circumvent having to release it to the press, if that's the goal of it, or to not have to have as many security parameters put in place ahead of time to make the movement happen.
Thank you. And let's turn back now to the president's plans to travel to the Capitol on January 6th. We know that White House counsel Pat Cipollone was concerned about the legal implications of such a trip, and he agreed with the Secret Service that it shouldn't happen. Ms. Hutchinson, did you have any conversations with Pat Cipollone about his concerns about the president going to the Capitol on January 6th?
On January 3rd, Mr. Cipollone had approached me, knowing that Mark had raised the prospect of going up to the Capitol on January 6th. Mr. Cipollone and I had a brief private conversation where he said to me, we need to make sure that this doesn't happen. This would be legally a terrible idea for us. We have serious legal concerns if we go up to the Capitol that day. And he then urged me to continue relaying that to Mr. Meadows, because it's my understanding that Mr. Cipollone thought that Mr. Meadows was indeed pushing this along with the president.
And we understand, Ms. Hutchinson, that you also spoke to Mr. Cipollone on the morning of the 6th as you were about to go to the rally on the Ellipse. And Mr. Cipollone said something to you like, make sure the movement to the Capitol does not happen. Is that correct?
That's correct. I saw Mr. Cipollone right before I walked out onto West Exec that morning, and Mr. Cipollone said something to the effect of, please make sure we don't go up to the Capitol, Cassidy. Keep in touch with me. We're going to get charged with every crime imaginable if we make that movement happen.
And do you remember which crimes Mr. Cipollone was concerned with?
In the days leading up to the 6th, we had conversations about potentially obstructing justice or defrauding the electoral count.
Let's hear about some of those concerns that you mentioned earlier in one of your interviews with us.
It is truly
Having a private
impressive
conversation with Pat late in the
how
afternoon,
far out of their way these
3rd
people
or
are going to try to
4th,
convince us that the 2020 election was just all completely
that Pat was
fine and
concerned
nothing
it
was
would
wrong with it.
look like we were obstructing justice or obstructing the electoral college count. And I apologize for probably not being very firm with my legal terms here, but that it would look like we were obstructing what was happening on Capitol Hill. And he was also worried that it would look like we were inciting a riot or encouraging a riot to erupt on the Capitol, at the Capitol.
In fact, in the days before January 6th,
Exactly,
and on January
incognito.
6th itself,
Exactly.
President Trump expressed to multiple White House aides that he wanted to go to the Capitol after his speech. Here's what various White House aides have told the committee about the president's desire to go to the Capitol.
Did the president tell you this, that he wanted to speak at the Capitol?
Correct, yes.
During the meeting in the
At
dining
the
room,
planned
did the
permanent
idea
rally.
of the president proceeding or walking to the Capitol on the 6th after his speech come up?
Walking to the Capitol? No,
Driving to the Capitol?
it came up.
Okay, how did it come up and what was discussed?
He brought it up. He said, I want to go down to the Capitol.
What about him marching to the Capitol on the 6th?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So it's kind of a general thing. I mean, to get into the specifics of it, I was aware of a desire of the president to potentially march to the or accompany the rally attendees to the Capitol.
When did you first hear about this idea of the president accompanying rally attendees?
Where there
to the
was
Capitol
a
on the 6th?
planned,
This was at the 6th.
permitted
This was during
rally.
after he finished his remarks.
When is the Colbert Show
When
insurrection
the president
hearing?
said that he would be going to the Capitol
we'll be
during his
waiting a long
speech
time
on
for
the
that.
ellipse, the Secret Service scrambled to find a way for him to go. We know this from witnesses and the Secret Service, also from messages among staff on the President's National Security Council. The NSC staff were monitoring the situation in real time, and you can see how the situation evolved in the following chat log that the committee has obtained. As you can see, NSC staff believed that Mogul, the president, was, quote, going to the Capitol, and, quote, they are finding the best route now. From these chats, we also know the staff learned of the attack on the Capitol in real time. When President Trump left the ellipse stage at 1:10, the staff knew that rioters had invaded the inaugural stage and Capitol Police were calling for all available officers to respond. When Republican leader Kevin McCarthy heard the president say he was going to the Capitol, he called you, Ms. Hutchinson. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
And in this text message, you told Tony Ornato, quote, McCarthy just called me too. And do you guys think you're coming to my office? Tell us about the call that day with Leader McCarthy during the president's speech on the ellipse.
I was still in the tent behind the stage, and when you're behind the stage, you can't really hear what's going on in front of you. So when Mr. McCarthy called me with this information, I answered the call and he sounded rushed, but also frustrated and angry at me. And I was confused because I didn't know what the president had just said. He then explained, the president just said he's marching to the Capitol. You told me this whole week you aren't coming up here. Why would you lie to me? I said, I'm not lying. I wasn't lying to you, sir. We're not going to the Capitol. And he said, well, he just said it on stage, Cassidy. Figure it out. Don't come up here. I said, I'll run the traps on this and I'll shoot you a text. I can assure you we're not coming up to the Capitol. We've already made that decision. He pressed a little bit more, believing me, but I think frustrated that the president had said that.
You're telling me that Kevin McCarthy called a 25-year-old and was giving her orders on what Trump could and could not do? Bullshit.
And
I want to see the phone records.
In our text
Bullshit. I do not believe this for 1 second.
Mr. McCarthy
there is no organization in the known universe.
He didn't respond after that.
In which
we understand, Ms. Hutchinson, that
executives
the plans
are getting
for
permission from a fucking 25-year-old.
Had included discussions
there's an ad break?
at some
What the
point
fuck?
about what the president would do.
I apologize for
when
the
he
ad
came up
break.
to the
I have no
Capitol
idea what's
January
going
6th.
on.
Let's look at a clip of one of your interviews discussing that issue with the committee.
When you were talking about a scheduled movement, did anyone say what the president wanted to do when he got here?
No. Not that I can specifically remember. I remember hearing a few different ideas discussed between Mark and Scott Perry,
so pro
Mark
tip,
and Giuliani.
Executives don't ask permission from
don't
25-year-olds ever. Ever.
Which conversations
Never
were elevated
happens.
to the president. I don't know.
Never happens ever.
What he personally wanted
And you
to
want
do
me to
when
believe
he went up to the Capitol that day?
that fucking Kevin McCarthy
You know, I know that
was talking to this
there were
25-year-old?
discussions about him having another
25-year-old?
outside of the Capitol before
Like
going
she was in charge of anything? She wasn't in charge of shit.
There was a conversation about him going into the House chamber at one point.
My God.
As we've all just heard in the days leading
exactly.
up to
Let me
January
call
6th,
a child
on the
and
day
tell
of the
her
speech,
secret
both
things
before
and expect her to
during
corral Trump.
And after
That doesn't
the
happen
rally
ever.
speech, President Trump was pushing his staff to arrange for him to come up here to the Capitol during the electoral vote count. Let's turn now to what happened in the president's vehicle.
That is a good
When the
question.
Secret Service told
Is she
him
under
he
oath
would
in those
not be going to
videos?
the
That's a good
Capitol
question.
after his speech. First, here is the president's motorcade leaving the ellipse after his speech on January 6th. Ms. Hutchinson, when you returned to the White House in the motorcade after the president's speech, where did you go?
When I returned to the White House, I walked upstairs towards the Chief of Staff's office, and I noticed Mr. Ornato lingering outside of the office. Once we had made eye contact, he quickly waved me to go into his office, which was just across the hall from mine. When I went in, he shut the door, and I noticed Bobby Engel, who is the head of Mr. Trump's security detail, sitting in a chair, just looking somewhat discombobulated and a little lost. I looked at Tony, and he had said, "Did you effing hear what happened in the Beast?" I said, "No, Tony, I just got
Bullshit.
back.
I don't believe this.
What happened?" Tony proceeded to tell me that
Looking to the left, that means she's
when the
lying.
president got in the Beast, he was under the impression from Mr. Meadows that the off-the-record movement to the Capitol was still possible and likely to happen, but that Bobby had more information. So once the president had gotten into the vehicle with Bobby, he thought that they were going up to the Capitol, and when Bobby had relayed to him, "We're not, we don't have the assets to do it, it's not secure, we're going back to the West Wing," the president had very strong, a very angry response to that.
And again, you're
Tony
telling
described him
me
as being
that
irate.
two senior people in the White House are pulling in a
The president said something
25-year-old
to the effect
assistant
of,
staffer
"I'm
to
the
have
acting
this very
president,
important
take
conversation
me
with
up to the
only
Capitol
her.
now."
Didn't
To
happen.
which Bobby
Nope.
responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel.
Bullshit.
Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel.
Oh
And
my
Mr. when Mr. Ornato had
God.
recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
You're telling me that Trump
And was
assaulted
Mr.
someone
Engel
in a car?
in the room as Mr. Ornato told you this story?
He
This
was.
is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my
Did
life.
Mr. Engel correct or disagree with any part of the story from Mr. Ornato?
Things that didn't
Mr.
happen
Engel
for
did not
2000. If
correct
you
or
think that
disagree
never
with any part
happened,
of the
please
story.
mount that like button.
Did Mr.
Objection,
Engel
hearsay.
or Mr.
Objection,
Ornato
speculative.
ever after that tell you that what Mr.
What
Ornato
the
had just
hell?
said was untrue?
Neither Mr. Ornato nor Mr. Engel told me ever that it was untrue.
And despite this
Oh my
altercation, this physical
God!
altercation during the ride back to the White House,
This
President
is
Trump
comedy.
still demanded to go to the Capitol. Here's what Kayleigh McEnany, the White House press secretary at the time, wrote in her personal notes and told the committee about President Trump's desire to go to the Capitol after returning to the White House.
When you wrote POTUS wanted to walk to the Capitol, was that based solely on what the president said during his speech or anything that he or anybody else said afterwards?
So to the best of my recollection, I believe when we got back to the White House, he said he wanted to physically walk with the marchers. And according to my notes, he then said he'd be fine with just riding the beast. But to the best of my recollection, he wanted to be a part of the march in some fashion.
Okay, and just for the record, the beast refers to the presidential limousine?
Yes.
President Trump did not go to the Capitol that day. We understand that he blamed Mark
I wonder
Meadows
if she's
for
on
that.
drugs or something. She seems like she's on like something that's keeping her
So
calm.
prior to leaving the rally site, when he got off the stage and everybody was making the movement back to the motorcade, I had overheard Mr. Meadows say to him then, as I had prior to Mr. Trump taking the stage that morning, that he was still
Grim
working
Metals,
on
this is right. This is right. Anyone who
getting it
buys
off the
this was the
record
people who
movement
thought
to
the
the
Weekly
Capitol.
World
So Mr.
News in
Trump
the
took the
90s was
stage.
real.
He was under the impression by Mr.
I was a big
Meadows
fan of the
that
Weekly World News,
it was still possible. So when
but it
he
wasn't
got off
real.
the stage,
I had relayed to Mr. Meadows that I had another conversation with Tony. The movement was still not possible. Mr. Meadows said, okay. And then as they proceeded to go to the motorcade, and Mr. Meadows had reiterated, we're going to work on it, sir. Talk to Bobby. Bobby has more information. Mark got into his vehicle. To my understanding, Trump got into the Beast. And after we had all arrived back at the White House, later in the day, it had been relayed to me via Mark that the president wasn't happy that Bobby didn't pull it off for him and that Mark didn't work hard enough to get the movement on the books.
The physical altercation that Ms. Hutchinson described in the presidential vehicle was not the first time that the president had become very angry about issues relating to the election. On December 1, 2020, Attorney General Barr said in an interview that the Department of Justice had now not found evidence of widespread election fraud sufficient to change the outcome of the election. Ms. Hutchinson, how did the president react to hearing that news?
Around the time that I understand the AP article went live, I remember hearing noise coming from down the hallway, so I poked my head out of the office and I saw the valet walking towards our office. He had said, "Get the chief down to the dining room, the president wants him."
And
So
again,
Mark
I
went
have to
down
ask,
the dining
why
room,
didn't any of
came
this
back
come
to the
out in
office a few
impeachment
minutes
too?
later.
You're telling me
After
that this
Mark had returned, I left the office and went
25-year-old
down to the dining
is the
room,
only person that
and I
knew that
noticed the
Trump
door
tried
was
to beat up
propped
his
open,
driver
and the
on
valet
January
was
6th?
inside the dining room changing the tablecloth off of the dining room table. He motioned for me to come in and then pointed towards the front of the room near the fireplace mantle and the TV,
Yeah,
where
exactly.
I first
Exactly.
noticed there was ketchup dripping down the wall and there's a shattered porcelain plate on the floor. The valet had articulated that the president was extremely angry at the Attorney General's AP interview and had thrown his lunch against the wall. Which
I can
was
believe that Trump did that,
causing
to be honest.
him
I
to have to
really
clean
can.
up. So I grabbed a
Oh
towel
my
and started
God,
wiping the
Trump
ketchup off the
broke
wall to
a
help the valet
plate.
out.
He broke a plate and
And he
spilled some
said something
ketchup.
to the
Oh
effect
my
of,
word.
he's really ticked off about this. I would stay clear of him for right now. He's really, really ticked
One
off
time
about
when I
this
got
right
my
now.
second strike on YouTube, I
Ms.
got so pissed
Hutchinson,
that I threw a full
was this the only
bottle of
instance
water
that
at my
you are
wall, and
aware
there's
of where
still a
the
hole in the
president
corner of my wall
threw
from where it
dishes?
hit. I absolutely believe
It's
that Trump
not.
threw something at the wall.
And are there other instances in the dining room that you recall where he expressed his
It's
anger?
not like a big hole, it's just like a dent.
There were
It's a
several
dent. It's
times
barely
throughout my
noticeable.
tenure with the chief of staff that I was aware of him either throwing dishes or flipping the tablecloth.
Oh
Let all the
my word!
contents of the table go onto
How
the floor and
improper!
likely break or go everywhere.
And Ms.
Trump
Hutchinson,
threw
Attorney
a
General Barr
dish.
described to the committee the president's angry reaction when he finally met with President Trump.
I would have been pissed at Bill
Let's
Barr
listen.
too. Bill Barr is a fucking traitor.
And I said, look, I know that you're dissatisfied with me, and I'm glad to offer my resignation. And he pounded the table very hard. Everyone sort of jumped, and he said, accept it.
Mr. Chairman, I reserve.
Gentlewoman
The bombshell
reserves.
evidence.
The chair
Trump
requests
threw a
those in
plate
the
at a
hearing
wall.
room to remain seated until the Capitol Police have escorted our witness from the room.
That's it?
Pursuant to the
That's
order
it?
of the committee of today.
Are you kidding
the
me?
chair declares the committee in recess for a period of approximately 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes. Holy shit.
And we have heard, no doubt, the most explosive testimony of these public hearings so far. Hearings into the attack on the Capitol, January the 6th, 2021.
Now let's
testimony
hear
from
what
that young
PBS
woman,
has to say and how they're going to play
Cassidy
this up.
Hutchinson, who was
Oh,
a special
God.
assistant
Guys,
to the president
we
and
might.
executive assistant
Listen.
to the
Hang on.
president's chief of
Hang on.
staff, Mark Meadows. She
Was there
testified that
applause?
the president.
Someone clap for her. She walked out of the room. Okay, I don't want to. Okay, we might have to do MSNBC live reaction stream tonight. We might have to. I know I have nothing remotely controversial at 9:30, but like you know, this is gonna oh, Trump threw a plate at a wall. Oh my word, let's have 3 hours of commentary about how no one has ever thrown something at a wall when they have been angry. We might have to do MSNBC live reaction stream tonight. It's been a minute. I think there's going to be extra reeing, extra crying, extra screaming, extra complaining. This is theater. What we're watching right now is nothing more than theater. Okay, let me explain something to you guys. If you have never had a real job in your life, if you never like worked in like an office job, 25-year-olds are not in a decision-making power about anything. In no organization in the history of organizations are 25-year-old assistants in decision-making power about anything in the real world. So you're going to tell me that this woman who is allegedly 25, which I don't believe because she does not look 25, you're going to tell me that she was like the integral person on January 6th who just knew everything that was going on, who like Kevin McCarthy was calling and telling her how to wrangle Trump, who was the only person to be told that Trump tried to beat up his driver. You're going to tell me that that's true? No. No, a 25-year-old is basically an intern, dude. That's not, in no organization in the history of the world has a 25-year-old been put in decision-making power, but you're telling me in the White House, a 25-year-old intern is like the center of all of this, and and this is new evidence that they haven't heard before, especially not after in the second impeachment trial? Dude. Like, come on. Her job, yes, Sin is correct. Her job was to get them coffee. That is what her job is. Do I believe for one red second that Kevin McCarthy is calling her, telling her how to wrangle Trump? No. That didn't happen. Things that didn't happen. I also want to see, one single photo, just one single image of a flagpole that has been fashioned into a spear. I saw 0 AR-15s there that day. I'm not gonna deny that people probably did have like pistols. I'm not gonna deny that people were probably concealed carrying. I'm not gonna deny that at all. I saw 0 AR-15s there, and I was in the okay. So where I was, so you had the ellipse. Hang on, I'll do this for a second. You have the ellipse, which is where like the main rally was, and then you have a big security right outside of the rally, and then you have the lawn that's leading back up to the Washington Monument. I waited in that security line. I got there at like 6:30 in the morning. That security line was, I'm not exaggerating, a mile and a half long. It literally went out, wrapped around the entire circle that was going around the Washington Monument, and it wasn't moving. And I waited in it for a while until I decided, like, F this. I don't really care about being in the ellipse. I'm just going to walk around out here on the lawn. And I walked down to the Lincoln Memorial, and I walked back up, and I was just walking around the entire lawn. I probably did, I don't know, like several loops around that area where I was walking like near where the security was. There was not a single moment where I saw that line die down, not the entire time. And I was there up until Trump's speech started. There was not one single moment where that line was died down. And outside of that line, they had all of the things that they were confiscating from people. They had like a big pile of them. They were like backpacks and chairs. There were definitely flagpoles. I will say that. I mean, Trump people have flags. It's just the way it is. I'm not going to question that maybe they got weapons. I didn't see any. So, but this idea, like the whole premise of this is like this 25-year-old is the linchpin of all of this is just stupid. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And why is this a testimony that they're just discovering now? Oh my word. All right, guys. Well, what do you think of this so far? Please make sure to mount that like button if you are enjoying my mockery of the January 6th show trials. We're going to keep watching. Obviously, they're on a little bit of a break right now. In fact, I know an ad break happened earlier. I'm not exactly sure why, but I think I have a control in YouTube where I can now insert ads. Do you guys mind if I try inserting an ad just to see how this works? Because I don't really know how it works, and I like money. So we're going to insert an ad. They're not watching anything anyway. We'll be right back in a sec. All right, let me know when the ad is done. My gosh. Huh. Weird. Yeah, Phil skip. Thank you, Phil. Did an ad get inserted? Did that work? I don't see it on my end, but I'm gonna ask you guys, did it work? All right. People are saying they didn't get an ad, so apparently it didn't work. Well, it was worth a try. Guys, please, if you are enjoying the work I'm doing, yeah, people are saying they didn't see the ad. Okay, well, that was a bust. I guess the ad got inserted earlier. Oh yeah, King Peter of the chat is opted out of all ads. All right, guys. Well, remember, if you want to support the work I'm doing, which includes sitting here bantering with you guys for several hours on a Tuesday afternoon, I hope that you guys will consider becoming a member of my locals community. Head over to kb.locals.com/support, and you can sign up for $5 a month or $50 a year. Or you can make a one-time gift, and any of those things are going to get you access to my community Zoom calls. I'm doing a community Zoom call tomorrow at noon Eastern time, which is exclusive for my local supporters. Would love for you to come out if you've never been to one of my community Zoom calls. They're awesome. Just normal people having normal conversation with no censorship, no judgment. Everyone is welcome. All points of views are welcome. That's not to say everyone's going to agree with you, but people are welcome to come and say whatever they want to say. I'd welcome you guys in. And yeah, you can get all that and lots of other perks by heading over to kb.locals.com/support and signing up. Airworks said they got 2 ads. Thank you, Airworks, for making up for Phil skipping the ad. And let's see. They're still talking about God knows what. Then, of course, guys, I do have a book out. It's called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Simon & Schuster, wherever books are sold, all that good stuff. You can get it in hardcover, you can get it in Kindle, and you can get the audio version, which is read by me with 1 Audible credit. And that is available now as well. If you've bought the book, if you enjoyed the book, I hope you'll consider leaving a review on whatever site you bought it on, and I would really appreciate it. Incognito, if staff knew a riot was at Capitol while Trump was speaking, then the Secret Service would have dragged Trump off stage to a secure location and not let him finish the speech. I think that's a really good point, Incognito. Really good point. All right, guys, let me get the I need to get the sound working again on this. Let me get that back up just so we're ready to go. But I want to put a poll in the chat. Should we have an MSNBC reaction stream tonight? It'd probably be starting around 7. Joy Reid reaction stream. Yes or no? Let me know if you want me to have MSNBC live reaction stream tonight. That is in the chat on YouTube. I'm sorry I can't do that on Odyssey or Rockfin or Rumble, but I thank you. Oh, got lots of people watching on Rumble. Hey, everyone watching on Rumble. We got Orange Man Gator. We got CA Junking, Mimi Mama. We've got a whole bunch of people over there. Are you Shackleford? Thank you guys for watching on Rumble. Please make sure you subscribe over there if you haven't already. I do always stream, well, almost always stream on YouTube, Odyssey, Rockfin, and Rumble. We've got some folks watching on Odyssey as well. Odyssey is my favorite alt-tech platform, I have to say. And Rockfin, we got some people over there as well. So thank you guys for joining me. All right, hopefully they come back in a minute. Oh yeah, looks like we're doing Joy Reid reaction stream tonight. You guys are voting for that almost overwhelmingly. I'll have to make sure I've got some cool beer ready to go. I'm going to show up drunk to nothing remotely controversial. Joshua's going to be like, what happened? I'm going to be like, I had to watch MSNBC for 3 hours. Got to give the people what they want, Joshua. Can only watch MS. Maybe we'll just do an all-day reaction stream. I'll end this here's what's going to happen. We're going to end this stream. I'm going to take a little break, and then we're just going to jump right into, I don't know if I can watch that much MSNBC. That seems like a bad idea. I don't know. I'm rethinking this in real time. I kind of want to see MSNBC reaction to what's going on right now. But I also just don't know if I can take watching MSNBC for that long. I don't know. We'll decide. Well, I suppose it will entirely depend on how insane the second part of this hearing is. But it looks like a whole bunch of you do want to do MSNBC live reaction stream tonight. 82% of you right now. You know, if you don't want to come to MSNBC live reaction stream, you don't have to. You have to treat MSNBC as though it is comedy. It is not real. It is fiction. It is made. It's like a sitcom. MSNBC is better than any sitcom that is on the air today. All entertainment sucks now. COVID ruined all entertainment and all movies for the rest of the time. Although side note, has anyone watched the movie Old? I didn't like the end of it. The end kind of sucked, but I really liked this movie. I think it's like on HBO or something. But it was really good. It's M. Night, Shyamalan? Is that how you say his name? I don't know. David Parker says, Mary Trump's stream is worse than MSNBC. I support your beers for the MSNBC reaction stream. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Schwan says, how about a reaction with Joshua? Well, Joshua and I are doing nothing remotely controversial later, so I can't. Joshua's schedule doesn't just open up willy-nilly for MSNBC live reaction stream. Come on. But guys, thank you for for mounting that like button for me. Thank you for subscribing to the channel if you have not already. We're going to close out that poll with 84% of you saying that I should, in fact, do MSNBC live reaction stream tonight. I don't know why you hate me. I feel like I'm trying to be here for all of you. I just don't know why you hate me. Yeah, Joshua is a working man. Joshua doesn't have time for gallivanting around like we do. Shar says they were all in on it, even the driver. If Trump showed up at the Capitol, everyone would run to him away from the Capitol. It would ruin their plan. Now, just as a reminder, there was a planned, permitted rally at the Capitol. They keep overlooking this fact. There was a planned, permitted rally at the Capitol. It's not as though they were going for nothing. It was a planned, permitted rally. There is a reason that Ali Alexander, although I think he's a dick, and I do my favorite person in the world, I think he is I don't have any positive feelings towards Ali Alexander at all in any way. However, he was holding a planned, permitted rally. So in that sense, he did nothing wrong. Now, he's a douche, but that doesn't change the fact that he had a permit for that damn rally. All right, they're coming back. Look how dramatic. Where's she getting all the money as a 25-year-old for all of these high-powered, expensive lawyers? That's a question I would like to know the answer to. Would anyone else like to know the answer to that question? All right, let's tune back in.
Attorney. We are waiting to hear more information on that. And there you see the chairman of the committee, Congressman Benny Thompson, the vice chair, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, and it looks like they are getting ready to start again. Let's listen.
Committee will be in order. Chair recognizes a gentlewoman from Wyoming, Vice Chair Cheney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we turn to what Ms. Hutchinson saw and heard in the White House during the violent attack on the Capitol on January 6th, let's discuss certain communications White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows had on January 5th. President Trump's
just a reminder,
associate,
Joshua did predict
Roger Stone,
January 6th on January 5th.
During the afternoon
They
and
should have
the
consulted
evening
with
of January
Joshua. Is what
5th
really
in
should have
Washington,
happened.
D.C. On January 5th and 6th,
Oh,
Mr.
Roger.
Stone was photographed with multiple members of the Oath Keepers who were allegedly serving as his security detail. As we now know, multiple members of that organization have been charged with or pled guilty to crimes associated with January 6th. Mr. Stone has invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination before this committee. General
Roger
Michael
Stone
Flynn
is an
has
idiot.
also
I'm just
taken
going
the
to say it.
fifth
He
before
is.
this
I do not
committee.
think he's a smart person.
Mr.
I don't.
Stone previously had been convicted of other federal crimes unrelated to
That doesn't mean I think
January
he did
6th.
anything wrong. You can be
General
stupid and not
Flynn
do
had
anything
pleaded
wrong.
guilty to a felony charge also predating and unrelated to January 6th. President Trump pardoned General Flynn just weeks after the presidential election. And in July of 2020, he commuted the sentence Roger Stone was to serve. The night before January 6th, President Trump instructed his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, to contact both Roger Stone and Michael Flynn regarding what would play out the next day. Ms. Hutchinson, is it your understanding that President Trump asked Mark Meadows to speak with Roger Stone and General Flynn on January 5th?
That's correct. That is my understanding.
And Ms. Hutchinson, is it your understanding that Mr. Meadows called Mr. Stone on the 5th?
I'm under the impression that Mr. Meadows did complete both a call to Mr. Stone and General Flynn the evening of the 5th.
And do you know what they talked about that evening, Ms. Hutchinson?
I'm not sure.
Is it your understanding that Mr. Giuliani, Mr. Eastman, and others had set up what has been called, quote, a war room at the Willard Hotel on the night of the 5th?
I was aware of that the night of the 5th.
And do you know if Mr. Meadows ever intended to go to the Willard Hotel on the night of the 5th?
Mr. Meadows had a conversation with me where he wanted me to work with Secret Service on a movement from the White House to the Willard Hotel so he could attend the meeting or meetings with Mr. Giuliani and his associates in the war room.
And what was your view as to whether or not Mr. Meadows should go to the Willard that night?
Why does she have an opinion?
I had made it clear to Mr. Meadows that I didn't believe it was a smart idea for him to go.
You
to
are
the
an
Willard Hotel that
assistant.
night.
You don't get to tell the White
I
House
wasn't
chief of
sure
staff
everything
what
that
to
was going
do.
on at
You
the
are a
Willard
25-year-old
Hotel, although
assistant.
I knew enough about what Mr. Giuliani
Sean
and his
Hammond said,
associates
please
were pushing
guilty
during this
or
period.
1+ years in solitary without trial. Yeah.
I didn't think that it was something appropriate for the White House chief of staff to attend or to consider involvement in. I made that clear to Mr. Meadows. Throughout the afternoon, he mentioned a few more times going up to the Willard Hotel that evening, and then eventually dropped the subject the night of the 5th and said that he would dial in instead.
So General Flynn has appeared before this committee. And when he appeared before our committee,
25-year-olds don't get to have opinions
let's
with
briefly
executives.
view a clip
It's
of
not
General
how it
Mike
works.
Flynn taking the Fifth Amendment. General Flynn, do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified?
Do we have a minute?
Yes.
All right, we're back. Congressman Cheney, could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. General Flynn, do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified?
Is that, can I get a clarification? Is that a moral question or are you asking a legal question?
I'm asking both.
I said the Fifth.
Do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified morally?
Take the Fifth.
You believe the violence on January 6th was justified legally?
Fifth.
General Flynn, do you believe in the peaceful transition
People
of
are
power
allowed
in
to
the
take
United
the
States
Fifth
of America?
Amendment.
The Fifth.
Let's move on now to January 6th.
In a court, they are
and the
not allowed
conduct
to
of
use
Donald
that as
Trump
incriminating
and Mark
evidence.
Meadows during
That
the
would
attack
never.
on the
They
Capitol.
tried to do that to Kyle Rittenhouse. Do you guys
Ms.
remember?
Hutchinson, I'd like now for us to listen to a description, your description of what transpired in the West Wing during the attack. For context, in this clip, you describe the time frame starting at about 2 p.m.
So I remember Mark being alone in his office for quite some time, and I know we've spoken about Ben Williamson going in at one point, and I don't personally remember Ben going in. I don't doubt that he had gone in, but I remember him being alone in his office for most of the afternoon, around 2 o'clock to 2:05.
You're not allowed to do what they just did in
Around
court.
2 o'clock to 2:05. we were watching the TV and I could see that the rioters were getting closer and closer to the Capitol. Mark still hadn't popped out of his office or said anything about it. So that's when I went into his office. I saw that he was sitting on his couch on his cell phone. Same as the morning where he was just kind of scrolling and typing. I said, "Hey, are you watching the TV, Chief?" Because his TV was small and you can see it, but I didn't know if he was really paying attention. I said, "You watching the TV, Chief?" He was like, "Yeah." The rioters are getting really close. Have you talked to the president? He said, "No, he wants to be alone right now." Still looking at his phone. So I start to get frustrated because I sort of felt like I was watching this is not a great comparison, but a bad car accident that was about to happen where
this is like a 25-year-old who thinks she knows everything about everything, painting herself as the lone heroine in this story. She was the lone voice of reason, the lone person who saw Trump try to beat up a driver, heard about Trump trying to beat up a driver, the lone person who people confided in.
And I just remember I put it out.
This is not real.
Mark, do you know where Jim's at right now? And he looked up at me at that point and said, "Jim?" I said, "Marcus, he was on the floor a little while ago giving a floor speech. Did you listen?" He said, "Yeah, it was real good. Did you like it?" And I said, "Yeah." "Do you know where he's at right now?" He said, "Well, no, I haven't heard from him." And I said, "You might want to check in with him, Mark." And I remember pointing at the TV and I said, "The rioters are getting close. They might get in." And he looked at me and said something to the effect of, "All right, I'll give him a call."
Not long after
Wait,
the
wasn't
rioters
she
broke
with
into
Trump
the Capitol,
in the back?
you
Wasn't she with
described
Trump
what
in the
happened with
backstage when
White
all
House
that was
counsel
starting?
Pat Cipollone.
She's now put herself in two different
No more
places
than
at
a
the same
minute,
time.
minute and a half later, I see Pat Cipollone barreling down the hallway towards our office.
She's now put herself in two different places at the same time.
Rushed right in, looked at me, said, "Is Mark in his office?" And I said, "Yes." He just looked at me and started shaking his head and went over, opened Mark's office door, stood there with the door propped open, and said something to the Mark is still sitting on his phone. I remember like glancing and he's still sitting on his phone. And I remember Pat saying to him something to the effect of, "The rioters have gotten to the Capitol, Mark. We need to go down and see the president now." And Mark looked up at him and said, "He doesn't want to do anything, Pat." And Pat
Kristen, she literally
said
has a
something to the
LinkedIn page.
effect
This
of,
is not
and
true. She
very
literally has a
clearly
LinkedIn. She was not wiped off the internet. She's
said this
literally
to Mark,
on
something to the
LinkedIn.
effect of,
As
"Mark,
much as I'm
something needs
frustrated
to
that
be
they're
done,
making
or
shit
people
up,
are going to
don't
die
make
and the
shit
blood's
up
going to
just
be
like
on your
them.
effing hands. This is getting out of control. I'm going down there." And at that point, Mark stood up from his couch, both of his phones in his hand. He had his glasses on still. He walked out with Pat. He put both of his phones on my desk and said, "Let me know if Jim calls." And they walked out and went down to the dining room.
A few minutes later, Representative Jordan called back.
A couple minutes later, so likely around between 2:15 and 2:25. I know the tweet went out at 2:24. I don't remember if I was there when the tweet went out or if it happened right afterwards, but Jim had called. I answered the phone, said 1 second. He knew it was, I guess he knew it was, I introduced myself, but I don't remember if he called my cell phone or if he had called one of Mark's. But I answered the phone and said, 1 sec, Mark's on the hall. I'm going to go hand the phone to him. He said, "Okay." So I went down. I asked the valet if Mark was in the dining room. The valet said yes. I opened the door to the dining room, briefly stepped in to get Mark's attention, showed him the phone, like flipped the phone his way so he could see it said Jim Jordan. He had stepped to where I was standing there holding the door open, took the phone talking to Jim with the door still propped open. So I took a few steps back. So I probably was 2 feet from Mark. He was standing in the doorway going into the Oval Office dining room. They had a brief conversation, and in the crossfires, I heard briefly like what they were talking about, but in the background, I had heard conversations in the Oval dining room at that point talking about the hang Mike Pence chants.
That clip ended, Ms. Hutchinson, with you recalling that you heard the president, Mr. Meadows, and the White House counsel discussing the hang Mike Pence chance. And then you described for us what happened next.
Wasn't until Mark hung up the phone, handed it back to me. I went back to my desk. A couple minutes later, him and Pat came back, possibly Eric Hirschman too. I'm pretty sure Eric Hirschman was there. But I'm confident it was Pat that was there. I remember Pat saying something to the effect of, Mark, we need to do something more. They're literally calling for the vice president to be effing hung. And Mark had responded something to the effect of, you heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong.
Oh my God.
To which Pat said something, this is effing crazy.
She's saying
We need
that
to be
Trump
doing
was
something
calling
more.
for
Briefly
Mike
stepped
Pence to be
into
hung on the Capitol
Mark's
lawn.
office. And when Mark had said something, said something to the effect of, he doesn't think they're doing anything wrong. Knowing what I had heard briefly in the dining room, coupled with Pat discussing the hang Mike Pence chance in the lobby of our office, and then Mark's
Objection
response,
speculative.
I understood there to be the rioters in the Capitol that were chanting for the vice president to be hung.
Let me pause here on this point. As rioters chanted, hang Mike Pence, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, said that, quote, Mike deserves it, and that those rioters were not doing anything wrong.
What the fuck?
This is a sentiment that he has expressed at other times as well. In an interview with ABC News correspondent Jonathan Karl, President Trump was asked about the supporters chanting hang Mike Pence last year. Instead of condemning them, the former president defended them.
Said hang Mike
Because
Pence.
it's common sense, John. It's common sense that you're supposed to protect. How can you, if you know a vote is fraudulent, right?
Yeah.
How can you pass on a fraudulent vote to Congress?
President Trump's view that the rioters were not doing anything wrong and that, quote, Mike deserved it, helps us to understand
Thank you,
why
Skid
the
Marks,
president
for being a
did
member of the
not
channel for 9
ask
months. He
the
says,
rioters to
absolute
leave
bull.
the Capitol for
I
multiple
can't display member
hours.
chats on the screen,
In
but I
fact,
appreciate
he put
it.
this tweet out at 2:24 p.m. Ms. Hutchinson, do you recall seeing this tweet in which the president said the vice president did not have the courage to do what needed to be done?
That doesn't mean he deserves
I
to
do.
be hung.
Ms. Hutchinson, what
That
was
is
your
not the
reaction when
same
you saw this
thing.
tweet?
It is not remotely the same thing at all. It is not the
As
same
a staffer
thing.
that worked
I don't know why I'm
to always
singing.
represent the administration,
These
to the
people
best
are
of my
making me lose my
ability,
mind.
and to
Because it is
showcase the good things
theater.
that he had done for the country. I remember feeling frustrated, disappointed, and really, it felt personal. I was really sad.
So you're telling me that she really
As an
thought that Trump
American,
wanted Mike Pence to be
I
hung,
was
and she was
disgusted.
like, I felt feelings of frustration and disappointment.
It was unpatriotic. It was un-American. We were watching the Capitol building get defaced over a lie. And it
Oh
was
yeah,
something that
she's
was
married. She's
really
getting a big contributor
hard
gig. She's getting a big
in
book
that
deal.
moment to digest,
She's getting a
knowing
big
what
book
I'd
deal.
been hearing down the hall in the conversations that were happening, seeing that tweet come up and knowing what was happening on
I'm
the
singing
Hill.
because it's vaudeville,
And it's something
darling.
that
It is
I
vaudeville.
still
She is
struggle to
basically a
work
puppet with
through
someone
the
pulling her
emotions of that.
strings.
Ms. Hutchinson, we have also spoken to multiple other White House staff about their reaction to Donald Trump's 224 tweet, condemning Mike Pence for not having the courage to refuse to count electoral votes, an act
If
that would
I
have been
thought
illegal.
that someone was going to be
Matthew
hung on the
Tottinger,
Capitol lawn, do you
a
know what my
former Marine
reaction wouldn't
intelligence
be?
officer,
Oh
who served
my
in the White
word,
House
that is
for
deeply
4 years,
disappointing.
including as Deputy National Security Advisor, was in the vicinity of the Oval Office at various points throughout the day. When he saw that tweet, he immediately decided to resign his position. Let's watch him describe his reaction to the president's tweet.
One of my staff brought me a printout of a tweet by the president. And the tweet said something to the effect that Mike Pence, the vice president, didn't have the courage to do what should have been done. I read that tweet and made a decision at that moment to resign. That's where I knew that I was leaving that day once I read that tweet.
Ultimately, members of the White House staff, Sarah Matthews, cabinet members, Secretary Chao and Secretary DeVos resigned as well. Here is Secretary DeVos's resignation letter. As you can see, in resigning on January 6th, Secretary DeVos said to the president, quote, "There's no mistaking the impact your rhetoric had on the situation, and it is the inflection point for me." Let's also look at Secretary Chao's resignation statement. When Secretary Chao resigned, she spoke of the January 6th attack, and she said, quote, "As I am sure is the case with many of you, this has deeply troubled me in a way I simply cannot set aside." Ms. Hutchinson, in our prior interviews, we've asked you about what the president's advisors were urging him to do during the attack. You've described roughly 3 different camps of thought inside the White House that day. Can you tell us about those?
There was a group of individuals that were strongly urging him to take immediate and swift action. I would classify the White House counsel's office, Mr. Hirschman, Ms. Ivanka
Mount that
Trump,
like button if
in
you
that
don't think that
category
Trump
of
wanted Mike Pence hung on the Capitol
really
lawn.
working
And you think she's
to
a
get him
lying
to take
shill.
action and pleading with him to take action. There was a more neutral group where advisors were trying to toe the line, knowing that Mr. Trump didn't necessarily want to take immediate action and condemn the riots, but knowing something needed to be done. And then there was the last group, which was deflect and blame. Let's blame Antifa. These aren't our people. It's my understanding that Mr. Meadows was in the deflect and blame category, but he did end up taking a more neutral route, knowing that there were several advisors in the president's circle urging him to take more
By the way,
action,
this woman should never be hired
which
for
I think
any
was
job
reflected
ever
in the
again.
rhetoric released
I
later
was going
that
to say
day in the
that.
videos.
She's flat
You
lying
told
about
us that
things
the
that, like,
White
and
House
it's like
counsel's
obvious
office
lies
was in the camp encouraging the president
and
to tell the rioters
exaggerations
to
about her
stop the
boss.
attack
She should
and to
never be
leave the
hired for any
Capitol.
job ever
Let's
again.
listen.
White
She
House
will be, of
counsel wanted
course,
there to be a
but she
strong
shouldn't be.
statement out to condemn the rioters. I'm confident in that.
Now let's look at just one example of what some senior advisors to the president were urging. Ms. Hutchinson, could you look at the exhibit that we're showing on the screen now? Have you seen this note before?
That's a note that I wrote at the direction of the chief of staff on January 6th, likely around 3 o'clock.
And it's written on a chief of staff note card, but that's your handwriting, Ms. Hutchinson?
That's my handwriting.
And why did you write this note?
The chief of staff was in a meeting with Eric Hirschman and potentially Mr. Philbin, and they had rushed out of the office fairly quickly. Mark had handed me the note card with one of his pens and started dictating a statement for the president to potentially put out.
And no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. There were 2 phrases on there, one illegal and then one without proper authority. The illegal phrase was the one that Mr. Meadows had dictated to me. Mr. Hirschman had chimed in and said, also put without legal authority. There should have been a slash between the 2 phrases. It was an or if the president had opted to put one of those statements out. Evidently he didn't. Later that afternoon, Mark came back from the Oval Dining Room and put the palm card on my desk with illegally crossed out, but said we didn't need to take further action on that statement.
So to your knowledge, this statement was never issued?
It was, to my knowledge, it was never issued.
And Ms. Hutchinson, did you understand that Ivanka Trump wanted her father to send people home?
That's my understanding, yes.
Let's play a clip of you addressing that issue.
I remember her saying at various points, she wanted her dad to send them home. She wanted her dad to tell them to go home peacefully, and she wanted to include language that he necessarily wasn't on board with at the time.
You will hear more about this at our later hearings, but we have evidence of many others imploring Donald Trump and Mark Meadows to take action. Here is some of that evidence, text messages sent to Mark Meadows during the attack. This is a text message at 2:32 from Laura Ingram. Hey, Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. In the next message,
Fox
this is hurting
News are
all of
such
us.
cowards.
And
They're
then
such fucking
he's destroying
cowards.
his legacy
Fox
and playing
News
into every
is part of
stereotype.
how this has turned
We
out
lose
so
all
bad for the right in the
credibility
first
against
place.
the BLM
Fox
Antifa
News
crowd
threw
if
their
things
own
go south.
viewers under the bus.
The president's son, Don Jr., also urgently contacted Mark Meadows. At 2:53, he wrote, he's got to condemn this shit ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough. As you will see, these are just two of the numerous examples of Trump supporters and allies urging the president to tell his supporters to leave the Capitol. It would not have been hard for the president to simply walk down to the briefing room a few feet down the hall from the Oval Office. As Nora O'Donnell noted during an interview with House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, where Leader McCarthy said he believed the attack was un-American.
I want to quickly bring in Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader. Leader McCarthy, do you condemn this violence?
I completely condemn the violence in the Capitol.
Kevin McCarthy,
What we're
also
currently
a
watching
coward.
unfold is un-American. I am disappointed. I'm sad. This is not what our country should look like. This is not who we are. This is not the First Amendment. This has to stop, and this has to stop now.
Leader McCarthy, the President of the United States has a briefing room steps from the Oval Office. The cameras are hot 24/7, as you know. Why hasn't he walked down and said that now?
I conveyed to the president what I think is best to do, and I'm hopeful the president will do it.
Republican House member Mike Gallagher also implored the president to call off the attack.
Mr. President, you have got to stop this. You are the only person who can call this off. Call it off.
He posted a
The
virtue
election is
signaling
over.
video on Twitter.
Call it off. This is bigger than you. It's bigger than any member of Congress.
He
It is
posted
about
a
the
virtue
United States
signaling
of America,
video on Twitter.
which is more important than any politician. Call it off.
Oh my God,
over.
these people are so awful.
Despite the fact that many people close to Donald Trump were urging him to send people home, he did not do so until
As a
later,
reminder, there was no
much
internet
later.
at the Capitol. It was
4:17
virtually
PM,
impossible to
Donald
see
Trump
anything.
finally told the rioters to go home.
I couldn't even get Twitter to work for
and
most
that
of the
he
day.
loved them. Here's a portion of the video
Like
President Trump
no one,
recorded
Trump
from the
could
White
have,
House.
Trump could have sung from the moon, and
We
it
have to have
wouldn't have
peace.
actually made it there.
So go
People wouldn't have
home.
seen it.
We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
But as we will show in even greater detail in future hearings, Donald Trump was reluctant to put this message out, and he still could not bring himself to condemn the attack. Ms. Hutchinson has told us that too.
The one that he put out at 4:17.
I'm sure you've discussed it, and just to elaborate if I hadn't already at that point, I recall him being reluctant to film the video on the 6th. I was not involved in any of the logistics or the planning for that video. I just remember seeing the video go out and feeling a little shocked after it went out.
On the evening of January 6th and the day after, The president's family and his senior
So
staff
Trump was
and
reluctant
others
to do something, but
tried
he
to
did it
encourage the
anyway, and it's
president
still
to
not good
condemn the
enough.
violence and
Got it.
commit to the peaceful
Got it.
transition
Nothing would have
of
been good
power.
enough. Nothing would have been good enough. If Trump had
At
done every single
3:31
thing that this
p.m. on January
25-year-old
6th,
intern wanted him
Sean
to do,
Hannity of
it
Fox
still
News
wouldn't have been good
texted
enough.
Mark Meadows. Mr. Hannity said, quote, "Can he make a statement? I saw the tweet. Ask people to leave the Capitol." Later that evening, Mr. Hannity sent another text message to Mark Meadows. This time, he shared a link to a tweet. That tweet reported that President Trump's cabinet secretaries were considering invoking the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump
The fact
from
that all of
office.
this is happening via Twitter should terrify all of us.
As you
Twitter
can
is not a
see on the
platform in which
screen,
any serious
the 25th
communication should be
Amendment to
taking
the
place at all,
Constitution
and it is
creates a
grossly
process for the
irresponsible that
transition of
anyone
power
uses
if a
this for
president is
serious
unfit
communication.
or unable to serve. 25th Amendment has never been used to remove a president. But the committee has learned that after the attack on the U.S. Capitol, this was being discussed by members of President Trump's cabinet as a way of stripping the full power of the presidency from Donald Trump. President Trump's supporters were worried. In addition to the tweet that he sent Mark Meadows after the attack, Sean Hannity apparently spoke with President Trump and warned him about what could happen. We understand that this text message that Sean Hannity sent to Kayleigh McEnany on January 7th shows what Mr. Hannity said to the president. First, no more stolen election talk. Second, impeachment
Sean
and
Hannity,
25th
coward
Amendment
again.
are real.
Establishment
Many people
shill
will quit.
Hannity.
Ms. Hutchinson, you told us that you were hearing about discussions related to the 25th Amendment. Here's part of what you said.
Oh.
Mr. Pompeo reached out to
Ghislaine
have
got 20
conversations
years.
with Mr. Meadows in case he hadn't heard
How many people think she's going to last the week?
discussions amongst cabinet secretaries. And from what I understand, it was more of a, this is what I'm hearing. I want you to be aware of it. But I also think it's worth putting on your radar because you are the chief of staff. You're technically the boss of all the cabinet secretaries. And, you know, if conversations progress, you should be ready to take action on this. Like, I'm concerned for you and your positioning with this. Yeah. Reach out to me if you have any questions or like I can be helpful with you at all.
Inside the White House, the president's advisors, including members of his family, wanted him to deliver a speech to the country. Deputy White House counsel Pat Philbin prepared the first draft of what would be the president's remarks on national healing, delivered via pre-taped video on January 7th. When he arrived at the White House on the 7th, Mr. Philbin believed that more needed to be said, so he sat down and started writing. He shared the draft with Pat Cipollone, who also believed the president needed to say more. Mr. Cipollone agreed with the content, as did Eric Hirschman, who reviewed the draft. The committee has learned that the president did not agree with the substance as drafted and resisted giving a speech at all. Ms. Hutchinson, do you recall discussions about the president's speech on January 7th?
I do.
Let's listen, Ms. Hutchinson, to what you told us about that and about the process of crafting those remarks.
I learned from a conversation with Mark and overhearing between him and White House counsel and Eric Hirschman as well that Trump didn't necessarily think he needed to do anything more on the 7th than what he had already done on the 6th. When he was convinced to put out a video on the 7th, I understand that he had a lot of opinions about what the context of that announcement were to entail. I had original drafts of the speech where there were several lines that didn't make it in there about prosecuting the rioters or calling them violent. He didn't want that in there. He wanted to put in there that he wanted to potentially pardon them. And this is just with the increased emphasis of his mindset at the time, which was he didn't think that they did anything wrong. The people who did something wrong that day, or the person who did something wrong that day, was Mike Pence by not standing with him.
But the president's advisors urged him to give the speech.
Who convinced him to do the video on the 7th?
I'm not sure who convinced him or if it was a group of people that convinced him.
Who was in the group that you're aware of?
That I'm aware of: Mark, Ivanka, Jared Kushner, Eric Hirschman, Pat Zabloni, Pat Philbin. Those are the people that I'm aware of.
Do you know why that group of people thought it was necessary for him to release a statement?
I believe Kayleigh McEnany as well. From what I understood at the time, and from what the reports were coming in, there's a large concern of the 25th Amendment potentially being invoked, and there were concerns about what would happen in the Senate if the 25th was invoked. So the primary reason that I had heard, other than, we did not do enough on the 6th, we need to get a stronger message out there and condemn this, otherwise this will be your legacy. The secondary reason to that was, think about what might happen in the final 15 days of your presidency if we don't do this. There's already talks about invoking the 25th Amendment. You need this as cover.
The president ultimately delivered the remarks. Unlike many of his other speeches, he did not ad-lib much. He recited them without significant alteration, except one. Even then, on January 7th, 2021,
FYI, the
day
audible
after
narration in the
attack
Kindle
on
book
the
is
US
still not in your.
Capitol,
Oh, it's still
the
not.
president still could not bring himself
The Kindle
to say,
narration is
quote,
different than the
"That
audible
this
one,
election
Joshua. I
is
think it's
now
just different.
over." One other point about the speech, Ms.
It's not the
Hutchinson.
Crypt Keeper, is
Did you
it?
hear that Mr. Trump at one point wanted to add language about pardoning those who took part in the January 6th
Thank you for letting me
riot?
know.
I did hear that, and I understand that Mr.
Trump
Meadows is
should have fucking
encouraging
pardoned
language
everyone
as
that took
well.
place that was there that day. He should have pardoned
Thank you.
everyone.
And
I'm
here's
sorry.
what you told
He
us
should have.
previously about that.
You said he was instructed not to include
It is the
Who
Crypt
was
Keeper. In the
instructing
Kindle
him not
version,
to
it's the
include
Crypt
Donald
Keeper.
Trump pardon in that January 7th?
All right, I will
understood
reach out to the
from White
publisher
House
and let them
counsel's
know.
office
Thank
coming into
you.
our office that morning that they didn't think that it was a good idea to include that in the speech.
That being Pat Cipollone?
That's correct. And Eric Hirschman.
Ms. Hutchinson, did Rudy Giuliani ever suggest that he was interested in receiving a presidential pardon related to January 6th?
He did.
Ms. Hutchinson, did White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows ever indicate that he was interested in receiving a presidential pardon related to January 6th?
Mr. Meadows did seek that pardon. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate it.
I want to thank our witness for joining us today. The members of the Select Committee may have additional
That's it.
questions for today's
That's the new
witness,
bombshell evidence that
and we
required a
ask that you
special
respond
emergency dramatic meeting.
expeditiously in writing
That's it.
to those questions. Without objections, members
Wow.
will be permitted 10 business days to submit statements for the record, including opening remarks.
I want to watch just
and
a little bit
additional
of the
questions
post
for the
trial
witness.
commentary after this,
Without
just to see what they
objection, the
say.
chair recognizes the vice chair for a closing statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin by thanking Ms. Hutchinson for her testimony today. We are all in her debt. Our nation is preserved by those who abide by their oaths to our Constitution. Our nation is preserved by those who know the fundamental difference between right and wrong. And I want all Americans to know that what Ms. Hutchinson has done today is not easy. The easy course is to hide from the spotlight, to refuse to come forward, to attempt to downplay or deny what happened. That brings me to a different topic.
Oh, good, Liz.
While our committee has seen many witnesses, including many Republicans, testify fully and forthrightly, this has not been true of every witness. And we have received evidence of one particular practice that raises significant concern. Our committee commonly asks witnesses connected to Mr. Trump's administration or campaign whether they've been contacted by any of their former colleagues or anyone else who attempted to influence or impact their testimony. Without identifying any of the individuals involved, let me show you a couple of samples of answers we received to this question. First, here's how one witness described phone calls from people interested in that witness's testimony. Quote,
They're
what they
accusing
said
Trump
to
of
me
witness
is as long as
tampering,
I continue
basically.
to be a team player, they know I'm on the right team. I'm doing the right thing. I'm protecting who I need to protect. You know I'll continue to stay in good graces in Trump world. And they have reminded me a couple of times that Trump does read transcripts. And just keep that in mind as I proceed through my interviews with the committee. Here's another sample in a different context. This is a call received by one of our witnesses. Quote, a person let me know you have your deposition tomorrow. He wants me to let you know he's thinking about you. He knows you're loyal and you're going to do the right thing when you go in for your deposition. I think most Americans know that attempting to influence witnesses to testify untruthfully presents very serious concerns. We will be discussing these issues as a committee, carefully considering our next steps. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Ms. Hutchinson, thank you. Thank you for doing your patriotic duty and helping the American people.
Well, I hope
get a
everyone is
complete
convinced by this
understanding of
bombshell
January 6th
testimony that Trump
and
was
its
pissed off
causes.
on January 6th and threw a plate
Thank you
at a
for your
wall
courage
and
in
didn't listen to a
testifying here today.
25-year-old fucking intern
You
who
have
seems
the
to think she's the
gratitude
center of
this
the
committee
universe.
and your country. I know it wasn't easy to sit here today and answer these questions, but after hearing your testimony in all its candor and detail, I want to speak directly to the handful of witnesses who have been outliers in our investigation, the small number who have defied us outright, those whose memories have failed them again and again on the most important details, and to those who fear Donald Trump.
I want to watch.
and
I
his
want to watch
enablers
the McCarthy hearings at
because
some
of this
point,
courageous
just
woman
for a
and others
comparison.
like her.
Just for
Your
a
attempt
comparison to what
hide
we're
the
seeing
truth from the
now.
American people will fail. And to that group of witnesses, if you've heard this testimony today and suddenly you remember things you couldn't previously recall, or there are some details you'd like to clarify,
They are so desperate.
or you discovered some courage you had hidden away somewhere, our doors remain open. The Select Committee will reconvene in the weeks ahead as we continue to lay out our findings to the American people. The chair requests those in the hearing room to remain seated until the Capitol Police have escorted the witness and members from the room. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.
All right. Well, let's just see what they say now. Let's just watch a couple minutes of the commentary just
Chairman
to see.
Benny Thompson gavels this hearing to a close. Without doubt, the most explosive testimony we've heard so far. In
That's
these
the
public
most
hearings,
explosive testimony so far.
most
I missed 2
damning
hearings last
testimony
week. That's
about
the most
President
explosive
Trump,
testimony
and in the
so
last
far.
few minutes,
Really?
damning testimony
Okay.
about his
Sure.
former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. We heard Cassidy Hutchinson, the young woman you see there on camera, who was the chief of staff's executive assistant, testify that Mark Meadows himself was asking the president about a pardon. She also testified that Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, was asking about a pardon. But that was just one part of what we heard in these the last 2 hours of testimony. Victoria Nurse, who has joined us for analysis, I think we cannot ignore the comment that we just heard from Cassidy Hutchinson about when the president was told about the threats to then Vice President Pence. The president said, or the president was described as saying, he doesn't think that they've done anything wrong.
Well, that was the theme of this testimony
is that true, Peter?
how over
Was
hours,
he supposed to testify? I know
while
that guy, the sergeant
members
of
were
arms,
going
died
into
last
the
night.
Oval Office, meeting
I don't
him
know
in his
why.
dining room, he kept saying,
But is
I
that
don't
true?
want
Was
to
he
issue a
supposed to
statement.
testify?
I don't think the writers had done anything wrong. Even after the Mike Pence chance, the president, as she testified, Mr. Meadows said, the president does not want to do anything.
All right, guys. Well, I think I am going to wrap the stream there for now. But I am serious. We're going to do MSNBC live reaction stream today. I don't know when, maybe like around 6 o'clock, maybe 5 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock, maybe definitely by 7 o'clock. We're definitely doing Joy Reid. But as you know, I do have another stream coming up later today that is a regularly scheduled stream, and that is going to be, hang on, I will pull it up right now. That is going to be Nothing Remotely Controversial with Joshua at 9:30 tonight. If you like news and if you like psychics, or even if you don't like psychics or don't believe in psychics, but you like want to mock the news and look at it in more of a fun way, Nothing Remotely Controversial is a show for you. It is a show that I do every single week with Joshua, who is a professional psychic, and we talk about what's going on in the world, and Joshua tries to make predictions about it. And it is absolutely true that Joshua predicted January 6th on January 5th, the day before it happened, on this show. But I guess a year and a half ago, that really did happen. He gets a lot of stuff right. It's really insightful. And so I hope you guys will join us at 9:30 tonight for that. But I will be doing MSNBC reaction stream at some point. I just don't know exactly when yet, because this is like an off-the-cuff thing. So it might be an hour, it might be 2 hours, might be 3 hours, but there will be some sort of MSNBC reaction stream tonight. The only way you can get notified of when that's going to happen is, number one, subscribe to my channel, and to turn on notifications, ring that bell, make sure you've turned on all notifications for the channel, and that way you'll be notified as soon as I decide to start to go live, because I do actually have other stuff I need to do today that isn't this, but as soon as I get that other stuff done, I promise I will go live for some MSNBC live reaction stream fun. You can also make sure you join my locals at kb.locals.com. You can join for free, and that will make sure that I can get in touch with you, and I will send out an announcement into the locals community as soon as I'm ready to go live for this and all of my live streams. And of course, if you want to support the work I'm doing, you can become a supporter in locals as well and get access to all sorts of exclusive perks, like my 2 weekly Zoom calls that I do every single week, including tomorrow at noon. If you join today, you will be able to join us tomorrow for a private, unrecorded Zoom call that is tons of fun and meet lots of good, sane people and all that good stuff. You can join for $5 a month. You can join for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift. And if you do all those things, I will look forward to talking with you directly on Zoom tomorrow at noon about what is going on in the world. But guys, I'm going to go take a little bit of a break. I'm going to craft a plan for the afternoon, and I will let you know when we're doing MSNBC reaction stream in a little bit. Take care, and we'll see you soon.